Chapter 25-21, 25-21 Change in the Heaven Ranking. 25-21 Change in the Heaven Ranking. Heaven and Earth Academy. On the last day of the battle for the seal, a large number of disciples of the Academy gathered in the square of the inner sect. There were close to 100,000 disciples from the inner sect alone. The elders of the Academy even specially allowed outer sect disciples to head to the inner sect square to watch the real-time updates of the heaven ranking prediction. Coupled with some immortal servants of the Academy and foreign cultivators, there were more than 100,000 cultivators gathered here, and it could be said to be a sea of people. The reason why there was such a huge commotion this time round was mainly because the number one of the inner sect, Su Zimo, was taking part in the battle for the seal. Furthermore, there were huge fluctuations to Su Zimo's ranking on the heaven ranking prediction. First, he was ranked in the top 10 before vanishing completely. Immediately after, he returned to the heaven ranking prediction but was ranked last. What was even stranger was that although there were changes to the rankings of the heaven ranking prediction during the past few days, Su Zimo's ranking had always been at the bottom, completely motionless. Nobody knew what happened in the Azura battlefield to cause such a strange situation. Today was the last day of the battle for the seal. If nothing went wrong, the final outcome would appear on this day, and there would also be a conclusion to the heaven ranking prediction. That was the reason why many disciples of the Academy were gathered here. Apart from Yan Bingying and the others, Tao Yao and Lu Ping ran over as well. In fact, some legacy disciples even came to watch out of curiosity on the last day. Yang Ruoxu and Princess Scarlet Rainbow stood side by side. Tao Yao and Lu Ping stood in front of them. For the past few days, Princess Scarlet Rainbow was worried and did not leave. Princess Scarlet Rainbow murmured softly, "No matter who the spirit cloud seal eventually belongs to, I just hope that nothing happens to senior brother Su and brother Qingcheng. Nothing matters as long as they're fine. Don't worry." Yang Ruoxu said, "With Zimo around, no harm should happen to Xie Qingcheng." Tao Yao was eating peaches leisurely at the side, chewing and swallowing slowly, as though he was not concerned about changes on the heaven ranking prediction. "Tao, why aren't you worried at all?" Lu Ping asked. "Senior brother's ranking has fallen to the bottom for more than 20 days without any changes." "I think it's all right," Tao Yao said casually. Compared to Lu Ping, Tao Yao knew Su Zimo better. In the center of the square, more than 1,000 foreign cultivators were gathered. They did not leave and were waiting for the final outcome. For more than 20 days, Su Zimo's ranking did not increase at all, and that made them feel relieved. Tianzhe of Flying Immortal Sect smiled. "Fellow Daoist Yen, there's quite a commotion in your academy with so many people gathered. Won't you guys be utterly embarrassed if Su Zimo ends up making a fool of himself?" "True." Ling Mu of the Great Jin Immortal Kingdom said, "What if Su Zimo dies in the Azura battlefield? Wouldn't that mean we've been waiting for nothing?" There were too many disciples of the Academy in the surroundings, and cultivators of other sects and factions did not dare to mock him too much. Yan Bingying was unwilling to argue with them and merely looked at the heaven ranking prediction in silence. Suddenly, her eyes lit up. The heaven ranking prediction had changed. Furthermore, the change. Yan Bingying could not believe her eyes and closed them intentionally, looking over once more. That was right. Su Zimo's ranking went from the bottom of the heaven ranking prediction to rank 7. It was even a few spots higher than his previous rank 10. "Everyone, look." Yan Bingying was a little agitated as she pointed to the ranking of the heaven ranking prediction and shouted. At that moment, some cultivators noticed the changes in the heaven ranking prediction as well. The crowd exploded instantly. Rank 7 on the heaven ranking prediction. He's even higher than Fang Qingyan's previous position by 3 spots. Senior brother Su is way too strong. I knew it. Many disciples of the Academy were invigorated. Yang Ruoxu and Princess Scarlet Rainbow exchanged glances and heaved a sigh of relief. Tianzhe, Ling Mu, Fairy Baihua and the other foreign cultivators had ugly expressions and could not believe it. "Sorry to disappoint you guys." Yan Bingying looked at Tianzhe and the others and said indifferently. Ling Mu chuckled dryly. That's nothing much, it might just be another mistake. After all, something like this happened more than 20 days ago. That's right. Fairy Baihua added, we'll talk about it after Su Zimo's evaluation is out. There has to be a convincing reason why his ranking has increased so much. Right then, the information of Su Zimo on the heaven ranking prediction underwent slight changes. In terms of cultivation realm, he had changed from a grade 6 heaven immortal to a grade 7 heaven immortal. After waiting for a long time, the other information remained the same without any additions. That's all? The foreign cultivators were dumbfounded. Tianzhe raised his brow. His ranking was raised from the bottom to rank 7 just because he advanced a single cultivation realm? That's way too ridiculous. That's right. That evaluation of him won't be able to convince the masses. Fairy Baihua nodded. There's naturally a reason for the rankings decided by the perfected immortals of Divine Firmament Palace. That's right. If you're indignant, go look for Divine Firmament Palace. In reality, many disciples of the academy felt guilty as well. After all, Su Zimo's achievements, information and evaluation were way too inferior compared to the other experts who were in the top 10 of the heaven ranking prediction. He did not have any advantage at all. However, the disciples of the academy refused to show weakness verbally. Just as everyone was arguing endlessly, the heaven ranking prediction changed once more. There's one less person in the top 10. Rank 5 of the heaven ranking prediction, the number 1 heaven execution guard, Song Su. Everyone quickly realized. Song Su's ranking did not decrease, but he had completely vanished from the heaven ranking prediction. How could this be? Ling Mu of the Great Jin Immortal Kingdom panicked a little. Logically speaking, there was only a single possibility. Something serious had happened to Song Su or he was severely injured. Otherwise, it meant that he was dead. Could something have happened to Song Su who was rank 5 on the heaven ranking prediction? Zhong Feiyu and Lai Xian are probably the only ones who can defeat Song Su. Before everyone could recover from the shock of this matter, someone else from the top 10 of the heaven ranking prediction disappeared. Everyone, look. One more person is gone. It's Heaven Immortal Luo Yang, rank 8 of the Heaven Ranking Prediction. Similar to Song Su, Heaven Immortal Luo Yang's situation was the same. He had vanished from the Heaven Ranking Prediction completely. Heavens, isn't this battle for the seal way too tragic? Paragons who were on the top 10 of the Heaven Ranking Prediction were defeated consecutively and removed from the Heaven Ranking Prediction. In the following period of time, a few more cultivators on the Heaven Ranking Prediction disappeared completely. Countless cultivators were focused on the heaven ranking prediction, wanting to see the final outcome. Before long, rank 7 of the heaven ranking prediction, Yu Hai of Mountain Sea Immortal Sect, vanished from the ranking. The entire heaven ranking prediction was in complete chaos. Everyone discussed softly and guessed the many possibilities of the Azura battlefield. A while later, the heaven ranking prediction changed once more. This time round, no one disappeared. Su Zimo's ranking rose yet again and he was now rank 3 on the heaven ranking prediction. Chapter 2522, 2522 Escape. 2522 Escape. After a momentary silence in the square of the inner courtyard, a huge commotion broke out. The crowd was in an uproar. This time round, it was not only foreign cultivators, even many disciples of the academy could not believe it. There's definitely something wrong with the heaven ranking prediction. When Tianzhe and the others saw the ranking, they were relieved and smiled. The true ranking will recover in a while. Zhong Feiyu was a reincarnated perfected immortal. Although Su Zimo was strong, he was only a grade 7 heaven immortal. How could he be above Zhong Feiyu? That's right. Ling Mu nodded as well. Lord Song Su is the number 1 heaven execution guard. Even if he can't defeat them, he can escape unscathed. How could anything have happened to him? Fairy Baihua pointed to the information of Su Zimo on the heaven ranking prediction and sneered. He only has 2 battle records and has never fought against top-tier heaven immortals. How can those battle records be convincing? Princess Scarlet Rainbow whispered, Ruoxu, what's going on? Yang Ruoxu pondered for a moment and whispered, there's only a single possibility for Zimo to be rank 3 on the heaven ranking prediction, above Zhong Feiyu. Zhong Feiyu lost to Zimo in the Azura battlefield. Princess Scarlet Rainbow's heart skipped a beat. The reincarnated perfected immortal, Zhong Feiyu, was defeated? Right then, Su Zimo's page on the heaven ranking prediction changed. Name, Su Zimo. Level, Grade 7 Heaven Immortal. Identity, Inner Sect Disciple of Heaven and Earth Academy, Successor of Astral Sect Secret Skill, Successor of the Jade Pure Jade Manual and suspected successor of the Buddhist monasteries. Although the information above did not change much, there were a few additional pieces of information in the battle record column. Battle record, in front of the malevolent blood lake in the Azura battlefield, he was surrounded by Zhong Feiyu, Lai Xian, Song Su, Yu Hai, Heaven Immortal Luo Yang and Xia Tianhuang, who were all in the top 10 of the heaven ranking prediction at that time. Su Zimo took the initiative and counterattacked. Under the encirclement of 6 people, he injured Song Su and was suspected to have been forced into the malevolent blood lake by Zhong Feiyu. Many cultivators were shocked when they saw that. Not only did Su Zimo dare to attack first against the encirclement of 6 top-tier heaven immortal experts, he even injured Song Su. How domineering was that? Everyone continued reading hurriedly. Su Zimo did not die in the malevolent blood lake. Instead, he broke through to become a grade 7 heaven immortal. On the final day of the Azura battlefield, he guarded the Permitha Bridge alone and fought against the 6 experts on the top 10 of the heaven ranking prediction and hundreds of heaven immortals single-handedly. Up till the end of the battle, nobody could cross the Permitha Bridge. There was even more information in that statement. This meant that Xia Qingsheng was the final winner of the battle for the seal. At the start of the battle, Su Zimo crippled Prince Yan and captured Lai Xian alive before releasing the latter. Thereafter, he killed Song Su instantly and severed 100,000 years of lifespan from heaven immortal Luo Yang. Next, he injured Xia Tianhuang severely before slaying Yu Hai and caused Zhong Feiyu to flee in fear. Pust. Hundreds of thousands of cultivators in the inner courtyard were shocked. If not for the fact that it was clearly stated on the heaven ranking prediction, everyone would not have believed it. In the end, the battle for the seal turned out like this. Although every single sentence seemed simple, there was a lot of information behind it. At the same time, it confirmed everyone's previous guesses. The number 1 heaven execution guard, Song Su, was indeed dead. Furthermore, he was killed instantly by Su Zimo. That was unimaginable for everyone. At the end of the battle, Lai Xian had an epiphany and his combat strength increased once more. However, he was captured alive by Su Zimo within 3 moves. Everyone was already feeling numb and did not know what to say. Of the 6 experts who were top 10 on the heaven ranking prediction, 2 of them were killed by Su Zimo, 1 was crippled and another was severely injured. Zhong Feiyu and Lai Xian were the only ones who escaped unscathed. However, Lai Xian was even captured alive by Su Zimo twice. Earlier on, Fairy Baihua had just declared that Su Zimo's battle records were way too underwhelming and he had no experience fighting against top heaven immortals. But now, in this battle, not only did Su Zimo fight against top heaven immortals, he even overwhelmed 6 of them single-handedly. Among the battle records of the paragons on the heaven ranking prediction, Yun Ting included, none of them were more shocking than this. That was the end of Su Zimo's battle records. There were also a few additional paragraphs in his evaluation at the back. Evaluation: previously, there were many criticisms when this lad was ranked 20 on the heaven ranking prediction. Everyone felt that he had way too few battle records and tough battles to convincingly deserve that rank. However, this battle for the seal is enough to prove this lad's strength. Any criticism against him is now self-defeated. Many academy disciples turned to look at Tianjia and the other foreign cultivators who were here to challenge Su Zimo and sneered. Tianjia and the others had ugly expressions of fear. The information on the heaven ranking prediction made them shudder and sweat profusely. Even a few simple pieces of information felt like a suffocating pressure was surging towards them. Su Zimo fought against 6 top heaven immortals with the cultivation of a grade 7 heaven immortal and won in the end. It's unprecedented. In combat, the combat talent he displayed and his control of the situation were shocking. He attacked decisively and sharply, destroying the alliance of 6 people with a thunderous might before defeating them one after another. The entire process was breathtaking and almost perfect. The 6 of us were lucky enough to witness this battle and felt that our trip was not wasted. The 6 perfected immortals of Divine Firmament Palace had an extremely high evaluation of Su Zimo. Many disciples of the academy felt their blood boil when they saw that sentence. It felt like they were sharing Su Zimo's honor. There's another detail worth mentioning in this battle. Su Zimo took the initiative domineeringly and captured Lai Xian before letting the latter off while declaring that if he could suppress Lai Xian once, he could do it again. Later on, as expected, Lai Xian was captured once more. Su Zimo kept his promise as well and let Lai Xian off once more. This lad is decisive to kill and his attacks are sharp. However, he has the magnanimity to accommodate others. It's rare and his future accomplishments are limitless. Heaven and Earth Academy will definitely prosper with this person. His battle records and evaluation occupied the entire page. Although there were not many details of the battle explicitly, it left countless room for imagination. Everyone was certain that this battle would definitely be recorded in history. Su Zimo would also be famous in the Divine Firmament and become one of the most popular heaven immortals in the 9 Firmament Immortal Domain who could be ranked alongside Yunting. Right then, a commotion broke out in the crowd. It was Tianjia, Lingmu, Fairy Baihua and the other foreign cultivators who wanted to leave this place but were stopped by many disciples of the academy. Everyone, where are you guys going in such a hurry? Stay here for a few more days. Otherwise, people might accuse our Heaven and Earth Academy of being rude to our esteemed guests. Hundreds of thousands of disciples of the academy surrounded the place in an impenetrable manner. Tianjia and the others looked at the surrounding crowd and the pressure on them intensified. They said with flustered expressions, I won't stay any longer. I still have something on, so I'll take my leave first. That's right. Lingmu added hurriedly, something happened to Lord Song-su. I've got to go back and make arrangements for his funeral. Yan Bingying smiled gently. Fellow Taoists, weren't you guys waiting for senior brother Su to return to challenge him? No. Tianjia and the others shuddered in fear and waved it off hurriedly. More than 1,000 foreign cultivators shook their heads in fear as well. Tianjia and the others were truly afraid. Who knew if they would be able to return alive after Su Zimo returned? If even Song-su was destroyed in a single move, who among them could defend against him? Yan Bingying waved it off with a mocking expression. Everyone from the academy opened up a path. Accompanied by a series of laughter, Tianjia and the others almost fled like birds and beasts. Chapter 25-23, 25-23 Even Stronger Opponent. 25-23 Even Stronger Opponent. At the same time, the cultivators of the major sects and factions of the Divine Firmament Immortal Domain who were paying attention to the battle for the seal saw the changes on the heaven ranking prediction. The Divine Firmament Immortal Domain was shocked. This battle had established Su Zimo's status in the Divine Firmament Immortal Domain as a peak heaven immortal. A grade 7 heaven immortal was ranked 3 on the heaven ranking prediction. Not to mention Yunting, there had never been anyone in history who could achieve such an accomplishment. As for the 6 perfected immortals of Divine Firmament Palace, their high evaluation of Su Zimo caused discussions among countless cultivators for the upcoming period of time. To think that even Zhong Feiyu would be scared off. Su Zimo has become famous overnight. It's said that Zhong Feiyu can't unleash his strength in the Azura battlefield. That's why he was forced to retreat. He'll definitely regain his dignity at the Divine Firmament Immortal meet. The divine firmament immortal meet has yet to begin, and the heaven ranking prediction alone is already so tragic. I truly can't imagine what sort of an intense battle will break out for the final heaven ranking. Yunting, Qin Gu, Su Zimo and Zhong Feiyu. Hehe, the four of them alone will provide a wonderful show. The moment the heaven ranking prediction was released, the entire divine firmament immortal domain was in an uproar. Zi Xian Immortal Kingdom, Library. Yunju and Yunting were also paying attention to the battle for the seal. Unlike the clamor of the outside world, the room in the library was silent. After reading the heaven ranking prediction, Yunju smiled gently and picked up an ancient book at the side to browse through. To her surprise, Yunting suddenly turned silent and did not say anything for a long time. Yunju was extremely surprised. Yunting was incomparably proud. Given her understanding of her younger brother, he should have revealed disdain when he saw the heaven ranking prediction. How could he be so calm after reading such bold statements? What's wrong? Yunju asked gently. He's very strong. Yunting said slowly, Sister, you're right. If our cultivation realms were the same, I might not be a match for him. The strange look in Yunju's eyes intensified. Up till this point of his younger brother's cultivation, he had been invincible. Coupled with his pride, although he lost once in the emperor's tomb, he had never bowed down. But now, Yunting would say something like that. It was clear that the power that Su Zimo displayed in the battle for the seal had already made Yunting feel immense pressure. A look of relief flashed through Yunju's eyes. At that moment, she had a feeling that Yunting had matured and truly grown. This momentary change in mental state might not have increased Yunting's combat strength much. However, it would be of great use to his future cultivation. A good opponent could indeed allow Yunting to grow faster and have an even stronger motivation to break through himself. Yunting bowed and prepared to leave. Where are you going? Yunju asked. There's still 1,000 years left. Although I'm at the grade 9 heaven immortal realm, I can't be negligent. Yunting said in a deep voice, I want to continue advancing and temper my sword Dao. That's the only way I can defeat Su Zimo at the divine firmament immortal meet. Go on. Yunju nodded with a smile. After Yunting left, Yunju seemed to be in deep thought. With a smile on her face, she murmured, Interesting. Zimo, even you might not have expected that you might force out an even stronger opponent due to your ranking on the heaven ranking prediction. Flying Immortal Sect. Green mountains, clear waters, waterfalls, lush greenery and cranes soaring, the scenery was like a painting. In the middle of the lake, there was a pavilion where a woman in plain blue palace robes sat. She had her hair tied into a bun and her skin was fair, beautiful and flawless. However, she had a cold expression. A fragrance wafted from the side and an ancient zither was placed in front of the table. The woman in palace robes strummed the strings gently with her fingers and the sound of the zither lingered. The sound of the zither contained a hint of anger and killing intent. It was hurried and chaotic. The two maidservants guarding behind the woman in palace robes could not withstand it and suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood with pale faces. The two maidservants were also heaven immortals. However, at that moment, they had terrified expressions as they knelt on the ground hurriedly and kowtowed. Princess, please forgive us. This woman in palace robes was a princess of the great Jin Immortal Kingdom, one of the 4 great fairies, Zither Immortal Mengyao. Mengyao's fingers paused and the sound of the zither gradually dissipated. She closed her eyes for a long time before opening them and saying indifferently, Rise. It's not your fault. I was just a little vexed. Is it because of Su Zimo? A maidservant probed. Mengyao said, To think that this lad's life is so tough that even Zhong Feiyu was defeated. Right then, a maidservant seemed to have sensed something and took out a messenger talisman. Princess, Heaven Immortal Luo Yang of Imperial Wind Temple requests an audience. Luo Yang? Meng Yao frowned slightly. What is he doing here? Another maidservant said, notwithstanding the fact that Heaven Immortal Luo Yang has been removed from the heaven ranking prediction, even if he's still rank 8, he's not qualified to meet our princess. The first maidservant said, from the information here, he wants to report to you a secret about Su Zimo, princess. Oh. Meng Yao's expression changed as she pondered for a moment before saying, let him come over. Before long, a maidservant brought an old cultivator with white hair to the pavilion. Meng Yao swept her gaze across him. If she had not seen it personally, it would be difficult to imagine that Heaven Immortal Luo Yang, who was initially in his prime, wow'll end up in such a state. Greetings, Fairy Meng Yao. Heaven Immortal Luo Yang bowed. Speak. Meng Yao said indifferently, I hope that the secret you mentioned can interest me. Otherwise. She did not continue, but her tone was cold. Imperial Wind Temple would not say anything even if she killed this Heaven Immortal who was now in his twilight years. Heaven Immortal Luo Yang shuddered in fear and said uneasily, back on the Dragon Abyss Star, I had the affinity of meeting you once. I wonder if you remember that, Fairy Meng Yao? Dragon Abyss Star. Meng Yao murmured softly and recalled carefully. Indeed, I've met you before. However, what has this got to do with Su Zimo? Heaven Immortal Luo Yang said in a deep voice, Fairy Meng Yao, you must have forgotten. Actually, Su Zimo was also present in the abyss of the Dragon Abyss Star. However, at that time, Su Zimo was only a mere black immortal. Oh. The Zither Immortal frowned slightly. She could not even remember Heaven Immortal Luo Yang, let alone a black immortal. Continue. Meng Yao said. Heaven Immortal Luo Yang was invigorated. At that time, there were 3 exalted immortals present. You, Sword Immortal Yu Hua and Perfected Immortal Wu Feng. The 3 of you were there to fight for a pure Yang spirit treasure. However, later on, the pure Yang spirit treasure suddenly disappeared while a gigantic divine dragon appeared out of nowhere. At the mention of that, Meng Yao remembered it clearly. At that time, the 3 of them perfected immortals fought against the divine dragon and were defeated. Even she was injured. Chapter 25-24, 25-24 Scheme. 2524 Scheme. When Heaven Immortal Luo Yang saw Zither Immortal Meng Yao's reminiscent expression, he knew that he had hit the nail on the head. He perked up and continued, at that time, the pure Yang spirit treasure, the God-Fiend's soul summoning banner, disappeared suddenly. Furthermore, strangely, Sword Immortal Yu Hua was the first to appear and interrogated who hid the God-Fiend's soul summoning banner. Later on, an Earth Immortal stood out and accused a Black Immortal of hiding the God-Fiend's soul summoning banner. However, Sword Immortal Yu Hua could not find any traces of the God-Fiend's soul summoning banner in the storage bag and consciousness of this Black Immortal. Therefore, he threw the ladder at the foot of the mountain casually. Pausing for a moment, Heaven Immortal Luo Yang took a deep breath and said, that Black Immortal was none other than Su Zimo of Heaven and Earth Academy. Oh. Meng Yao's expression changed as she murmured, a Black Immortal managed to cultivate to this realm in just a few thousand years? Wasn't that cultivation speed way too terrifying? Not many geniuses of the upper world could reach this level, let alone cultivators who ascended from the lower worlds. All these years, even in the entire heavenly world, there was only a single Yunting. Meng Yao said slowly, if not for a huge opportunity, he would definitely not have reached this stage. That's right. Heaven Immortal Luo Yang said in a deep voice, therefore, I suspect that the God-Fiend's soul summoning banner fell into Su Zimo's hands back then. However, he managed to deceive and hide from Sword Immortal Yu Hua. What's even stranger is that although Sword Immortal Yu Hua did not find the God-Fiend's soul summoning banner in his body back then, he threw the ladder casually at the foot of the mountain, smashed against the stone wall. That power was enough to kill any Black Immortal. However, that person survived. Meng Yao shook her head gently. Even so, it doesn't mean anything. There's something else I suspect. Heaven Immortal Luo Yang said hurriedly, back when the God-Fiend's soul summoning banner disappeared, the soul of a divine dragon appeared and fought against it. Thereafter, a true divine dragon appeared and fought against you three perfected immortal experts. Among the cultivation techniques that Su Zimo specializes in, there's a secret skill that's similar to a dragon roar. Furthermore, from what I know, he even released an essence spirit secret skill of the dragon race in the battle for the seal. Meng Yao's eyes flashed coldly in deep thought. Logically speaking, essence spirit secret skills of the dragon race could not be released without the essence spirit of the dragon race. Heaven Immortal Luo Yang said, I'm guessing that there's a high chance that the soul of the divine dragon back then and the divine dragon that appeared later on came because of this lad. There must be a relationship between this lad and the dragon race. A playful look gradually appeared on Meng Yao's face. He's not from the same race as us? Interesting. After pondering for a moment, she took out 2 messenger talismans and left a few words on them with her spirit consciousness, sending them to Imperial Wind Temple and Heaven and Earth Academy. Wait here. Meng Yao said to Heaven Immortal Luo Yang, repeat what you just said to them after they arrive. Heaven Immortal Luo Yang nodded in agreement. Before long, a figure descended. Riding on a gigantic golden ant, the person sped over with a ferocious aura. Before he arrived, he shouted, What happened? Why are you in such a hurry to see me, Fairy Meng Yao? Could it be that you miss me too much? Ha 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 ha. Meng Yao did not reply and moved her finger, causing the sound of a zither to echo. Before the sound of the zither was finished, another sword beam sped over from the other side. It was sharp and extremely fast, surpassing the former in the blink of an eye. Oh! The perfected immortal on the golden ant raised his brow slightly. Fellow Taoist Yu Hua is here too. Wu Feng, how have you been? Sword Immortal Yu Hua paused and looked at the man not far away, replying indifferently. Perfected Immortal Wu Feng patted the golden ant beneath him and asked it to stop by the lake. It descended into the pavilion in the middle of the lake with Sword Immortal Yu Hua. What's the meaning of this? Perfected Immortal Wu Feng smiled and asked, It's only been a few thousand years and the 3 of us have gathered again. Fairy Meng Yao, you truly couldn't bear to see us leave back then, huh? I called the 2 of you here for an important matter. Meng Yao did not reply to Perfected Immortal Wu Feng. She glanced at Heaven Immortal Luo Yang at the side and gestured for him to repeat what happened. Sword Immortal Yu Hua and Perfected Immortal Wu Feng had different expressions after hearing that. A look of realization flashed through Sword Immortal Yu Hua's eyes. That explains everything. I've always felt that this lad looked familiar, as though I had seen him somewhere before. So, he's that ant from back then. He didn't die after I threw him at the foot of the mountain back then? In his impression, the black immortal back then was like an ant that he stepped on to death. How could he remember? What do the 2 of you think? Meng Yao said, If the dragon that injured us truly came because of this lad, we can't just let that go, right? There's no evidence for something like this. Perfected Immortal Wu Feng looked at Sword Immortal Yu Hua who was not far away. Furthermore, Su Zimo is a disciple of Heaven and Earth Academy and fellow Taoist Yu Hua's junior brother. Right now, his reputation is like the sun in the midday skies. We can't bully the weak and attack him, right? You don't have to worry about me for this matter. Sword Immortal Yu Hua said in a deep voice, If that lad is truly related to the dragon race or is someone from the dragon race, as the leader of the legacy disciples of the academy, I can't be biased. Because of Mo Qing, Sword Immortal Yu Hua had long hated Su Zimo to the core and was afraid that he would not be able to find a chance to attack him. Right now, this was a rare opportunity. If Su Zimo were to advance to the perfected One realm and be accepted as an official legacy disciple by the sect master, it would be almost impossible for him to attack Su Zimo again. I'm quite alright with letting this matter go. Perfected Immortal Wu Feng shrugged his shoulders and suddenly said. He could tell that Sword Immortal Yu Hua was clearly hostile towards Su Zimo. The feud between Zither Immortal Meng Yao and Su Zimo had long spread through the entire Divine Firmament Immortal domain. In reality, there was no deep feud between him and Su Zimo. Furthermore, it was unknown if Su Zimo had anything to do with the matter of the Dragon Abyss Star back then. At that moment, the reason why perfected immortal Wu Feng suddenly expressed his stance was not because he did not want to interfere. Instead, he wanted to advance by retreating and obtain greater benefits. Meng Yao and Yu Hua were both smart people. After some thought, they could tell what perfected immortal Wu Feng was thinking. Meng Yao said, "From what I know, that lad has many treasures on him. I only want the pure jade manual." Suddenly, perfected immortal Wu Feng made his huge demand. Meng Yao and sword immortal Yu Hua frowned at the same time. However, in their hearts, the elimination of Su Zimo was the priority. At that thought, the two of them exchanged glances and nodded in agreement. "All right." Perfected immortal Wu Feng agreed readily. "How should we attack? Su Zimo is now in Heaven and Earth Academy. We can't possibly go to the academy and kill him, right?" Meng Yao looked at sword immortal Yu Hua as well. Sword immortal Yu Hua narrowed his eyes slightly. "We have to wait for an opportunity. At the very least, we have to wait for him to leave Heaven and Earth Academy. Divine Firmament Immortal Meet." The three of them thought of something and spoke at almost the same time. Chapter 25-25, 25-25 Fiend Cave. 25-25 Fiend Cave. After Su Zimo helped Xia Qingqing obtain the Spirit Cloud Seal, he did not linger in the Yan-Yang Immortal Kingdom. Instead, he bid farewell to Xia Qingqing and returned to Heaven and Earth Academy. Naturally, Xia Qingqing was the biggest winner in the battle for the seal this time round. However, he had benefited as well. If not for the opportunity at the bottom of the malevolent blood lake, it would have taken him at least 1,000 years to cultivate to become a grade 7 Heaven Immortal. Furthermore, he would not have the chance to comprehend the peerless killing secret skill, White Tiger Corpse Collection. After cultivating at the bottom of the malevolent blood lake for a month, the Green Lotus True Body absorbed countless malevolent blood chi, and the malevolent blood in the White Tiger Bone had already been exhausted. The White Tiger Bone became a pile of bone scraps thereafter as well. Su Zimo returned to Heaven and Earth Academy, prepared to enter seclusion once more. If there was nothing else, he intended to cultivate until the Divine Firmament Immortal meet and strive to advance further to become a Grade 8 Heaven Immortal. Once he cultivated to become a Grade 8 Heaven Immortal, he was confident that he could defeat Yunting even without using his Green Lotus bloodline. Su Zimo returned to his cave abode. Just as he was about to enter seclusion, he sensed a commotion from the martial Dao Prime Body. Fiend Domain. Tianhuang's sect was located at the corner of the Fiend Domain and was remote. However, over the years, Tianhuang's sect grew rapidly under the watch of Thunder Monarch Heavenly Wrath and the 5 Fiend Generals. They conquered and gradually expanded outwards. Although it was not fast, it grew steadily. Furthermore, Thunder Monarch Heavenly Wrath and the 5 Fiend Generals grew increasingly famous in the Fiend Domain as well. Of course, at the mention of Tianhuang's sect, everyone's first thought was of the sect master of Tianhuang's sect, Desolate Marshal. Although Desolate Marshal had not appeared all these years, the battle in the Heartland spread through the entire Fiend Domain, and the battle in the Jade Firmament Immortal Domain shocked the entire heavenly world. Because of that battle, countless cultivators joined Tianhuang's sect one after another. This day, the Martial Dao Prime Body who was in seclusion suddenly had a thought and took out a black incomplete diagram from his storage bag. The black incomplete diagram looked extremely ancient and was made of a special material that was as thin as paper. The Martial Dao Prime Body had tried it before. Given his current cultivation, he could not tear the black incomplete diagram even if he released his full strength. Not long after the Martial Dao Prime Body ascended into the Fiend Domain, he destroyed Scarlet Dark Valley. This was obtained from the Valley Master of Scarlet Dark Valley. The Valley Master of Scarlet Dark Valley's cultivation realm advanced by leaps and bounds and rose extremely quickly. The origin of it was this black incomplete diagram. When the Martial Dao Prime Body first obtained the black incomplete diagram, it depicted a headless figure wielding a weapon that resembled a spear. At that time, he merely took a casual glance and felt his mind and gaze drawn in by the figure in the black incomplete diagram. Every single trajectory on the incomplete diagram seemed to have turned into countless runes that surged into his mind. Immediately after, a berserk, murderous and destructive emotion rose in his heart. At the same time, an endless stream of heaven and earth essence chi swarmed into his body, which he absorbed and refined at an unimaginable speed. Strange black patterns appeared on his skin and face in a mysterious manner. The Tao heart of the martial Tao prime body was indestructible and unyielding, that emotion naturally could not affect him. He calmed down quickly. However, the black patterns on his body did not disappear immediately. The power adhered to his body, as though it wanted to take root. However, it was refined by his blood chi and vanished after he summoned the martial Tao furnace. After that, the martial Tao prime body did not take another look at the black incomplete diagram. But now, he suddenly felt a commotion from the black incomplete diagram. When he took out the incomplete diagram and took a look, he could not help but frown. The tall figure on the black incomplete diagram had already vanished. In its place were curved trajectories that resembled a map. Not only that, there was another power in the black incomplete diagram that seemed to want to guide him to a certain location. Interesting. The martial Tao prime body murmured softly and stood up. After all these years of seclusion, his true martial Tao body had already been cultivated to greater mastery. Now, after pondering about things, he decided that he might as well take a look since he had the chance. The martial Tao prime body left the place of seclusion and Heavenly Wolf was sprawled not far away. When he heard the commotion, he opened his eyes and stood up with a tremble. "Are you going out?" Heavenly Wolf was invigorated and excited. Given Desolate Marshal's current reputation in the fiend domain, he felt proud to be able to carry the latter out for a walk. "Stay in Tianhuang's sect." The martial Tao prime body said casually and disappeared in a flash, leaving behind a bitter Heavenly Wolf. The martial Tao prime body informed the Thunder Monarch before leaving Tianhuang's sect. According to the guidance of the black incomplete diagram, he sped in the direction of the heartland of the fiend domain. About 10 days later, the martial Tao prime body gradually slowed down. All these years, he had heard some rumors along the way. It was said that the major heaven-grade sects and factions of the fiend domain had moved and headed towards the Biyao mountain of the fiend domain. It was similar to his current trajectory. The reason why Biyao mountain was the most famous mountain in the fiend domain was because there was a fiend tree growing on it called the Undying Tree. It was said that the Undying Tree was immortal and indestructible, having existed for countless years. When the martial Tao prime body underwent tribulation transcendence, he had interacted with a few heaven-grade factions of the fiend domain. Apart from those sects and factions, there was another sect with an absolute overlord status in the fiend domain that sent a large number of cultivators as well. Firmament Ascension Palace. The name of this faction was enough to tell of its ambitions. It wanted to ride above the 9 firmaments. The reason why Firmament Ascension Palace reigned supreme in the fiend domain and other factions could not contend against it was mainly because Firmament Ascension Palace had once given birth to an emperor. Have you heard? A gigantic fiend cave appeared at the foot of Biyao mountain. Sinister winds gust from within and it's almost impossible for perfected fiends to enter with their cultivation realms. What fiend cave? I heard that there's a tomb of a fiend emperor beneath Biyao mountain. It's said that the first appearance of this fiend emperor's tomb alarmed many sects and factions. I wonder how many opportunities, dermic treasures and secret skills are inside. I heard that even the Prince of Firmament Ascension Palace is mobilized, prepared to head down to check things out. I heard that there seems to be a traitor in Firmament Ascension Palace. While Firmament Ascension Palace was chasing after the traitor, this fiend cave appeared. Along the way, the martial Tao prime body heard many rumors and gradually had an outline of this matter. If he was not wrong, the black incomplete diagram in his hands should be related to the fiend cave that appeared beneath Biyao mountain. The closer he was to Biyao mountain, the more fiend cultivators there were and most of them were perfected fiends. Of course, there were also an extremely small number of audacious heaven immortals who wanted to join the crowd and test their luck. However, be it perfected fiends or heaven immortals, when they saw the purple-robed man with a silver mask, they revealed looks of cautiousness and made way. Nobody dared to get close to him. It was difficult to make complete changes in the past due to many conflicting terms. Now that the story has entered a new arc and the old terms are less likely to appear, the emperors of Tianhuang mainland in the past will now be known as monarchs to avoid misunderstandings of power levels in the story as we continue forward. Chapter 25-26, 2526 Gathering of Fiends. 2526 Gathering of Fiends. The sect master of Tianhuang's sect, Desolate Marshal, is here too. Hurry, let's keep our distance from him lest we offend him. Although many fiend cultivators had never seen the Martial Dao Prime body before, they quickly recalled the rumors about Desolate Marshal when they saw his purple robes and silver mask. Tianhuang's sect resides in a remote corner and Desolate Marshal is merely a perfected fiend. Why should we fear him? The entire fiend domain has been alarmed by the appearance of this fiend cave and countless sects, factions and supreme experts have arrived. Desolate Marshal is nothing much. What do you know? Another person said with lingering fear, in that battle back then, Desolate Marshal killed Yan Zui and the others in a million-strong fiend army. In the eyes of many people, he has already replaced Yan Zui and is now the new supreme perfected fiend. Hee hee. A long-faced fiend cultivator at the side gave a strange laugh. Not necessarily. I heard that the Prince of Firmament Ascension Palace looks down on him. Now that the fiend cave has appeared, the prince, Ling Xian, has appeared as well. If the two of them meet, there will definitely be a fight. That's for sure. The prince's title alone is something that nobody else will dare to use. It literally means that he will surpass and execute all other immortals. How domineering and arrogant is that? Another heaven immortal pouted his lips slightly. That's true. Don't forget, Prince Ling Xian is backed by a fiend emperor as well. Unless Desolate Marshal has a death wish, he'll definitely want to avoid Prince Ling Xian. A large number of cultivators were gathered in the vicinity of Biyao Mountain. They covered the mountains and plains densely. The appearance of the fiend cave had alarmed countless fiend cultivators who wanted to search for opportunities and encounters. After the Martial Dao Prime body arrived, he surveyed his surroundings. At the foot of Biyao Mountain, there was a gigantic cave that was pitch black with sinister winds gusting. It was like the gaping mouth of an ancient ferocious beast that could not be penetrated with eyesight nor spirit consciousness. This was the fiend cave that the fiends were referring to. At the front of the fiend cave, a few major factions occupied a place with fluttering flags and experts under their lead. No other cultivator dared to approach. There were hundreds of thousands of fiend cultivators gathered there. Apart from a group of heaven immortals, there were also hundreds of perfected fiends in front of the hundreds of thousands of cultivators. Their leader was not old, but his gaze was sharp as an eagle and his aura was terrifying. Hundreds of thousands of fiend cultivators surrounded that person like stars surrounding the moon. From his bearing, he should be the disciple of Firmament Ascension Palace, Ling Xian. The appearance of this fiend cave and the fact that Firmament Ascension Palace sent out such a huge force was proof of how strong their foundation was. Behind Firmament Ascension Palace were a few other major factions. Black Fiend Sect, Yellow Springs Villa, God Fiend Ridge and Wind Fiend Sect that had met the Martial Dao Prime body before were among them. Apart from the four heaven-grade factions, there was also Ghost King Palace, Heavenly Evil Sect and Soul Devouring Palace. These three factions were ranked alongside the former. Although the cultivators brought by those factions were slightly less than Firmament Ascension Palace, there were still more than 100,000 of them respectively. After the Martial Dao Prime body arrived, many cultivators avoided him and a blank space appeared around him. Although the Martial Dao Prime body was alone, he was ranked alongside the heaven-grade factions and was not disadvantaged in terms of aura. The perfected fiends of Black Fiend Sect, Yellow Springs Villa, God Fiend Ridge and Wind Fiend Sect revealed wary expressions when they saw the Martial Dao Prime body. The young master of Heavenly Evil Sect rolled his eyes and suddenly declared, "This is fellow Daoist Desolate Marshal, the supreme perfected fiend who has shaken the fiend domain and threatened the 9 firmaments in recent years, right?" The martial Tao prime body did not move at all and remained silent without even looking at the person. That statement attracted the attention of Ling Xian. Initially, Ling Xian was standing at the front and did not notice the martial Tao prime body. When he heard that, he turned around slowly and glared at the martial Tao prime body with an unfriendly expression through the crowd. Desolate Martial is here too. Ling Xian nodded slowly with a cold glint in his eyes. Good timing, good timing. Over the years, Desolate Martial's reputation in the fiend domain had already surpassed his. In fact, there were many rumors that said that Desolate Martial was the de facto supreme perfected fiend, that was even more unacceptable for Ling Xian. The fight for the perfected fiend ranking was hosted by Firmament Ascension Palace. Although Yan Zui was dead, the fight for the new perfected fiend ranking had yet to begin. What rights did this person have to be assumed as the top of the perfected fiend ranking with the title of supreme attached to him? In a flash, Ling Xian was prepared to cause trouble for the martial Tao prime body. However, the perfected fiends behind him exchanged glances and advanced one after another to stop Ling Xian. Prince, please calm down. There's nothing to fear about Desolate Martial. There's no need to use a sledgehammer to crack a nut. That's right. Lord Ling Xiao instructed us to prioritize the fiend cave and not create unnecessary trouble. That's right. Once we obtain the treasure in the fiend cave, Desolate Martial will be like fish on a chopping board waiting to be slaughtered by us. In reality, the perfected fiends were still wary of the martial Tao prime body. However, they could not express weakness verbally. Ling Xian nodded slightly and retracted his killing intent. Pausing for a moment, he seemed to have suddenly thought of something. Gritting his teeth, he asked hatefully, "Are you guys sure that the slut fled within?" Someone witnessed it personally. A perfected fiend said firmly, "However, that slut is only a grade 5 heaven immortal. She definitely won't be able to withstand the sinister winds of the fiend cave. She must have died inside a long time ago and her essence spirit was destroyed without a corpse left." When he heard that, Ling Xian's eyes flashed with a hint of sadness. From his tone earlier on, he clearly hated this slut to the core. However, at that moment, his heart ached when he heard that the slut was dead. Not necessarily. Another perfected fiend consoled, "Your Highness, don't forget that that woman has an apocalyptic fiend diagram in her hands as well. This fiend cave created this diagram, and with this diagram on her, she might be able to neutralize the sinister winds within." Sinister winds gusted at the entrance of the fiend cave. Many factions did not act rashly, waiting for the sinister winds to weaken or even dissipate. Otherwise, even the perfected fiends present could not withstand such strong sinister winds. Strange, why don't I see any fiend king experts? Logically speaking, the first time a fiend cave as such appears, there should be countless opportunities and treasures inside. Even fiend kings should be tempted. There were at least millions of cultivators in the vicinity of Biyao Mountain, and that number was still increasing rapidly. However, there were indeed no fiend king experts among the many fiend cultivators. A fiend cultivator said in a deep voice, "Although the strongest cultivators in the vicinity are only perfected fiends, there are definitely many fiend king experts watching in secret. It's just that they haven't appeared yet." That's right. This is the first time that the fiend cave has appeared. Although no one has touched the opportunities and treasures inside, there are countless potential dangers. These fiend kings are smart and want us to test the waters. If a shocking treasure truly appears, they'll definitely appear and fight for it. Just as everyone was discussing, the martial Tao prime body suddenly moved and strode towards the entrance of the fiend cave. Chapter 25-27, 25-27 Defeating the Prince with a Single Punch. 25-27 Defeating the Prince with a Single Punch. That action caused a commotion. This was the first time the fiend cave had opened and sinister winds howled. Nobody knew what was inside and no one dared to act rashly. But now, the martial Tao prime body actually dared to barge into fiend cave alone against the terrifying sinister winds. Danger and opportunity coexisted. Although the first to enter might face unimaginable danger, they might also be the first to obtain an opportunity. The martial Tao prime body was skilled and bold. With his true martial Tao body, he did not have to fear the bone-piercing sinister winds. Furthermore, he had just heard the conversation between Ling Xian and the others. If he was not wrong, the black incomplete diagram in his hands should be the Apocalypse Fiend diagram mentioned by Firmament Ascension Palace's perfected fiend. If the sinister winds were so strong that even he could not defend against them, he could attempt to summon the black incomplete diagram. Furthermore, he had another way out, Avicii. He had the Hell Suppression Tripod with him and could shatter space at any moment to teleport back to Avicii. In a flash, the martial Tao prime body passed by the crowd of a few major factions and the dozens of Firmament Ascension Palace cultivators, heading towards the Fiend Cave. The reaction of the martial Tao prime body caused the killing intent in Ling Xian's heart that had just calmed down to burst forth. You have a death wish. Ling Xian's expression was cold as he channeled his blood qi. Wielding a cold sword in his hands, he stabbed towards the back of the head of the martial Tao prime body. Before Ling Xian's figure arrived, the sharpness of his sword qi had already descended. Sensing something, the martial Tao prime body spun around and his gaze shone brightly beneath his silver mask. The sharpness of the sword qi that burst forth managed to shatter his gaze and dissipate it. Ling Xian's reaction was extremely fast. Just as the sword was about to pierce the cheek of the martial Tao prime body, his wrist suddenly trembled gently. Buzz! Instantly, thousands of sword lights appeared in the vision of the martial Tao prime body and enveloped him like a dense sword net. Among the endless sword lights, there was only one that contained true killing intent. This was indeed a brilliant move. Ling Xian suddenly changed tactics while they were so close to one another. Almost nobody would be able to find a fatal sword strike in HTE midst of the sword qi. A look of mockery flashed through Ling Xian's eyes. Against that sword strike, Desolate Marshal could only retreat and avoid it. However, once Desolate Marshal retreats, he would unleash his sword stance completely and it would be endless until he killed Desolate Marshal. Suddenly, the martial Tao prime body extended his hand and reached into the boundless sword lights. In a flash, he grabbed the blade of the sword. Instantly, all the sword lights vanished. Ling Xian's move was dispelled. Your hand is gone. Ling Xian was in no hurry and sneered. Suddenly, he exerted strength in his palm, wanting to turn the sword and shatter the palm of the martial Tao prime body. However, he suddenly realized that his sword did not budge at all in the palm of the martial Tao prime body. It was as though he had already lost control of the sword. How is this possible? Ling Xian's eyes were filled with disbelief. This sword was a spirit treasure crafted personally by his father for him. Furthermore, it was a grade 9 pure yang spirit treasure. How could it fail to crush this person's body? Before he could react, he felt a shocking force coming from his palm. It was mixed with a vibration and distortion power that intertwined. He could not hold on to the sword in his hands at all and felt a sharp pain in his palm. Instinctively, he let go and the sword flew out of his hands. Right in front of Ling Xian, his pure yang spirit treasure was snatched away by the bare hands of the martial Tao prime body. This is bad. Ling Xian's heart sank. He did not have time to think and circulated his movement technique hurriedly, retreating. As for the martial Tao prime body, he threw in reverse after snatching the sword. Swoosh! A sword beam flashed past like lightning that tore through the night. It was way too fast. Instantly, Ling Xian channeled his blood qi to its limits and the sound of a tsunami could be heard from his body. Circulating a secret skill of Firmament Ascension Palace, he floated in midair like a willow catkin and avoided that attack by a hair's breadth. The sword almost brushed past his cheek. The blade of the sword left a deep wound on his face with a layer of blood seeping out. However, he had yet to come into contact with the actual danger. The martial Tao prime body snatched the sword with his left hand and threw it casually while he punched towards Ling Xian's face with his right hand. Scram! The martial Tao prime body merely spat out a single word coldly. That punch exploded like a volcano and surged like raging tides crashing onto shore with an unstoppable might. That punch was not a secret skill nor was it flashy. However, up till this point of his cultivation, Ling Xian had fought countless battles but he had never felt such a terrifying punch. The fist before him expanded continuously and was even more ferocious than any divine power, secret skill or divine weapon. What was even more frightening was that this fist seemed to have drained all the heaven and earth essence qi in the surroundings, sealing his escape path completely. The entire space was spiraling towards this fist. Even with his position, he was drawn towards the fist uncontrollably. He had nowhere to retreat and did not even have the chance to escape. Bloodline phenomenon. Ling Xian was the prince after all. With the personal impartation of the Fiend Emperor, he tried his best to calm down in this moment of danger. He crossed his arms in front of him and released his bloodline phenomenon at the same time. Bang! That punch collided heavily against his arms. Ling Xian shuddered and there seemed to be a momentary pause in the entire space, as though time had stopped. Immediately after, with a boom, his bloodline phenomenon was shattered by a single punch from the martial Tao prime body the moment it was formed. Like an arrow, Ling Xian was sent flying back into the crowd. Ling Xian coughed out large mouthfuls of blood and his arms trembled. The bones in his arms were shattered by a single punch from the martial Tao prime body. Two perfected fiends hurried forward, wanting to support Ling Xian. However, when Ling Xian crashed into their embrace, the two perfected fiends shuddered and spat out a mouthful of blood with horrified expressions as they were sent flying. Ling Xian bumped into a few people before coming to a stop. His spirit consciousness moved and he hurriedly took out a large number of elixir pills from his storage bag and stuffed them into his mouth. He looked at the figure at the entrance of the fiend cave in shock and anger and his heart pounded. He felt a lingering fear. If he had not reacted in time, that sword and punch earlier on would have killed him. Thankfully, he released his bloodline phenomenon. Otherwise, he would have been ruptured by a single punch from Desolate Marshal and his essence spirit would not have had the chance to escape. This person was way too terrifying. A hint of fear flashed through the depths of Ling Xian's eyes. Pust. It was only then that gasps could be heard and the cultivators were shocked. The martial Tao prime body turned around, counterattacked, snatched the sword, threw the sword and punched in one go. The fight between the two of them was way too fast. For many heaven immortals, they did not even see the process clearly and did not know what happened. In the eyes of many fiend cultivators, Ling Xian had just charged forward with his sword. The moment the martial Tao prime body turned around and shouted, Ling Xian was sent flying back and was severely injured. Chapter 25-28, 25-28 Sweep. 2528 Sweep. The martial Tao prime body looked at Ling Xian who had retreated into the crowd and did not continue chasing. There were too many cultivators gathered around Ling Xian and it would take some effort to kill him. Furthermore, the moment he injured Ling Xian, a few terrifying auras locked onto him. If he was not wrong, those terrifying auras were Grotto Heaven Realm experts. This was the Prince of Firmament Ascension Palace after all. It was not surprising if a few fiend kings stood out to protect him after such a huge matter. The martial Tao prime body could not be bothered with this person. As his blood chi surged, he dispersed the few auras on his body and turned to enter the fiend cave. Ling Xian consumed many elixir pills. Coupled with his strong blood chi and regeneration capabilities, his face was much more rosy by now and his injuries were healing rapidly. Desolate Marshal. Ling Xian looked at the back view of the martial Tao prime body and spat out two words with even more killing intent. It did not matter even if he could not defeat Desolate Marshal. As long as the fiend kings of Firmament Ascension Palace killed Desolate Marshal, he would still be the supreme perfected fiend. Your Highness, what should we do now? A perfected fiend at the side asked. Ling Xian waved his hand and gestured to the perfected fiends behind him. The few of you, go in and take a look. Remember, you must keep an eye on desolate Marshal and not let him escape from your line of sight. Behind Ling Xian, 20 perfected fiends were selected. The 20 perfected fiends knew what was going on. The prince before them clearly had reservations and did not dare to venture deep into the fiend cave. That was why he wanted them to check things out first. However, the hierarchy of Firmament Ascension Palace was strict and they did not dare to disobey. Hold on. Pondering for a moment, Ling Xian looked at the two people beside him. Duan Ming, Song Shi, the two of you should head in as well just in case. Understood. Duan Ming and Song Shi replied in deep voices. Both of them were experts of the half-step Grotto Heaven realm. Ling Xian did not feel confident if there were only perfected fiend experts. It was naturally much safer with 2 half-step Grotto Heaven experts. Furthermore, they were only the vanguard. Fiend kings of Firmament Ascension Palace were also observing the activity of the fiend cave nearby. If anything happened, those fiend kings would appear immediately. Moreover, Firmament Ascension Palace was not the only one. The other 7 major sects and factions had fiend kings lurking nearby as well, waiting for an opportunity to strike. The young master of Black Fiend's sect seemed to be listening carefully. A moment later, he chose more than 10 perfected fiends and headed towards the fiend cave. Yellow Springs Villa, God Fiend Ridge, Wind Fiend Sect, Ghost King Palace and Soul Devouring Palace refused to fall behind and charged towards the fiend cave with their young masters in the lead as well. Interesting. The young master of Heavenly Evil Sect chuckled. Seems like Heavenly Evil Sect can't fall behind either. Let's go. Due to the intrusion of the Martial Dao Prime Body into the fiend cave, the calmness of the scene was broken instantly. Led by Firmament Ascension Palace, the 7 heaven-grade fiend sects and factions could not hold it in any longer and sent people into the fiend cave. This was the first time that the fiend cave had appeared and the treasures within had never seen the light of day. They had been sealed for many years and were definitely relatively intact. This meant that whoever could get their hands on them first would be able to obtain even more benefits. Of course, the first batch of people to enter the fiend cave would also have to face unpredictable danger. Unlike the other cultivators, the young masters of the 7 heaven-grade fiend sects had something to rely on and were not bothered by the sinister winds at the entrance of the fiend cave. After the 7 young masters entered the fiend cave, they secretly took out a black incomplete diagram from their storage bags in the darkness and held it in their palms. Others might not know the origin of this fiend cave, but the 7 of them each had a black incomplete diagram in their hands. Naturally, they knew that beneath this fiend cave was definitely a tomb of the fiend emperor. The reason why they came this time round was also because they could sense the guidance of the black incomplete diagram. Initially, not many people would know about this. However, it was said that a traitor appeared in Firmament Ascension Palace and stole the black incomplete diagram from the hands of Prince Ling Xian before escaping here to barge into the fiend cave. That was why this matter was exposed. The sinister wind at the entrance of the fiend cave was the most ferocious. As the Martial Dao Prime Body ventured deeper, the sinister wind gradually weakened until it vanished completely. The fiend cave resembled a gigantic inverted tomb. The Martial Dao Prime Body followed the connection of the black incomplete diagram and headed down diagonally. Although the range of his visual and spirit consciousness detection was limited, he was not worried with the help of his spirit perception. After walking for a long time, a faint light appeared below. It was as though he had already arrived at the bottom of the fiend cave. The entire journey was extremely quiet and he did not encounter any danger or traps. That was a little strange. The Martial Dao Prime Body was puzzled. Logically speaking, if it was truly an emperor's tomb, given the other party's status, they would definitely not want their tomb to be discovered and trampled by others in the future. Therefore, there would be all sorts of dangers and traps in the tombs and cave abodes of many experts. Throughout history, most emperors' tombs were extremely dangerous places. Apart from the sinister wind at the entrance of the fiend cave that was a little dangerous, there was nothing unusual about this fiend cave. Faint footsteps sounded from behind, mixed with the chatter of countless cultivators. It was intertwined and chaotic. If he was not wrong, many fiend cultivators outside should have followed him in. When the martial Tao prime body descended, his vision cleared up and light returned. Before them was a gigantic palace with all sorts of luxurious decorations. The four walls were embedded with night luminance beads the size of longans. On the four walls of the palace, there were rows of shelves that should have contained many treasures. Some of them were clearly meant for displaying divine weapons. Some of them seemed like they were meant for cultivation techniques and secret manuals. However, the shelves were empty right now. It was as though everything had been completely swept away by others. If I'm not wrong, all the treasures in this palace must have been looted by that traitor of Firmament Ascension Palace. The martial Tao prime body recalled the conversation between the few cultivators in Firmament Ascension Palace and made a rough guess. The palace was extremely huge. Apart from the entrance he came from, there was another exit on the left of the palace that led to an unknown place. Right then, Firmament Ascension Palace and the other cultivators entered as well. The martial Tao prime body did not linger and followed the guidance of the black incomplete diagram towards the exit on the left of the palace. Initially, there were immortal pills here. Duan Ming took a deep breath in front of a row of shelves and said in a deep voice, "The medicinal fragrance of the immortal pills here has yet to dissipate. It's clear that someone has just taken away all the immortal pills. Isn't that obvious? It must be Desolate Marshal," Song Shi said coldly. The young master of Heavenly Evil's sect harumphed coldly. "Isn't Desolate Marshal way too ruthless? He took away everything without even leaving a single piece of scrap for us. If this is the tomb of a fiend emperor, those were definitely not the only treasures." Duan Ming said in a deep voice, "This place can only be considered as the entrance to the tomb. The true treasures are definitely still behind. Seems like there's no danger in this fiend emperor's tomb. We were way too cautious. Let's hurry and follow him. Don't let him take away all the treasures again." Someone shouted and everyone chased after him hurriedly. Chapter 25-29, 25-29 Number 1 Beneath Grotto Heaven. 25-29 Number 1 Beneath Grotto Heaven. Everyone quickened their steps and even used movement techniques, turning into streaks of light that sped forward, afraid that the martial Tao prime body would steal the treasures again. Before long, everyone caught sight of a second palace. The palace was even wider and grander than the previous palace. The shelves were still empty except for a purple-robed cultivator with a silver mask who stood alone in the middle of the hall. The expressions of many cultivators darkened completely and many of them looked at the martial Tao prime body with strong hostility. There were so many treasures in the tomb that even if everyone might get a share even if they charged forth together. But now, so many treasures were taken by a single person. How could all the cultivators present accept that? Although everyone was wary of Desolate Marshal's notorious reputation, the perfected fiends present were not weak either. Furthermore, there were a few half-step Grotto Heaven experts present. Even if Desolate Marshal was the supreme perfected fiend, he had no chance of winning against half-step Grotto Heaven experts. When they saw that Desolate Marshal was about to leave first, many cultivators swarmed forward and surrounded the martial Tao prime body in the blink of an eye. The group of perfected fiends led by Duan Ming and Song Shi of Firmament Ascension Palace and the young masters of the 7 heaven-grade fiend sects glared at the martial Tao prime body with unfriendly expressions. The martial Tao prime body looked at the group of people expressionlessly without saying anything. His gaze was as though he was looking at a group of ants. "Desolate Marshal, don't go overboard," Duan Ming said in a deep voice. "Everyone who sees the treasures in this tomb should get a share. Don't even think about taking everything for yourself. Desolate Marshal, we're not willing to be enemies with you." After a brief pause, the young master of Black Fiend's sect changed the topic and said coldly, "However, you'll have to ask us first if you want to keep the treasures here for yourself." "That's right." The young master of Heavenly Evil's sect sneered, "Desolate Marshal, spit out all the treasures you took away earlier on and redistribute them." The young masters of the Heaven-grade Fiend sects expressed their stance. In their opinion, even if Desolate Marshal was strong, he could not defend against so many perfected 1.5-step grotto heaven experts. Furthermore, all of them were backed by the sect masters of the various fiend sections. Those were top-tier Fiend King experts who were camping right outside the Fiend Cave, ready to charge in at any moment. The martial Dao Prime Body understood. The group of cultivators thought that he had taken all the treasures in the 2 palace halls for himself. The martial Dao Prime Body did not explain, nor did he bother to. He merely surveyed his surroundings and asked slowly with a cold and intimidating gaze, "Who gave you the guts to provoke me, huh?" Before his sentence was finished, the martial Dao Prime Body suddenly attacked and grabbed the young master of Black Fiend's sect in front of him at lightning speed. The martial Dao Prime Body opened his heavenly encompassing palm, and his fingers were like 5 heavenly piercing stone pillars, imprisoning the young master of Black Fiend's sect before closing. The 5 heavenly piercing stone pillars squeezed the body of the young master of Black Fiend's sect, and a blood mist spewed everywhere. Ah! In a tragic cry, the young master of Black Fiend's sect was crushed by a single palm strike from the martial Dao Prime Body, and his essence spirit was destroyed, dying on the spot. At the same time, a black incomplete diagram floated down. The martial Dao Prime Body put away the black incomplete diagram conveniently. The black incomplete diagram in the hands of the young master of Black Fiend's sect was made of the same material as the one in his storage bag and definitely had some connection. Furthermore, he had just noticed that the young master of Black Fiend's sect was not the only one with a black incomplete diagram in his hands. The other 6 young masters of the Fiend's sects did too. "Since you guys said that I wanted to take all the treasures for myself, I'll show you guys the true meaning of that right now." The martial Dao Prime Body attacked fiercely and crushed the young master of Black Fiend's sect with a single palm strike. After snatching the black incomplete diagram, he grabbed the young master of Yellow Springs Villa at the side. Duan Ming was enraged and hollered, "Desolate Marshal, how dare you? Kill him!" Many cultivators shouted as well and attacked. Duan Ming and Song Shi channeled their blood chi and charged towards the martial Dao Prime Body in a triangular manner. Huff! Huff! The martial Dao Prime Body threw out 2 punches in succession. Every single punch was filled with immense strength and was unstoppable. Before the 2 punches descended, Duan Ming and Song Shi felt a scorching, suffocating sensation and could not breathe. Their bloodlines seemed like they were about to evaporate. The 2 of them finally experienced the pressure of Prince Ling Xian facing that punch. The 2 of them did not dare to hesitate and hurriedly condensed their grotto heavens. Although half-step grotto heaven experts failed in their breakthroughs to the grotto heaven realm, they could condense grotto heaven phantoms and make use of a wisp of grotto heaven power. Even that single wisp was sufficient to suppress all perfected immortals and perfected fiends. However, the grotto heaven phantoms of Duan Ming and Song Shi dissipated the moment they appeared. Bang! Bang! The 2 of them received the 2 punches of the martial Dao Prime Body almost with their physiques only. Both of their eyes widened and their gazes dimmed. They froze in midair for a moment before their bodies exploded into blood mists. Both their essence spirits were killed by a single punch from the martial Dao Prime Body. The martial Dao Prime Body did not know why their grotto heaven phantoms suddenly failed. However, even if the 2 of them could completely condense their grotto heaven phantoms, they would not be able to defend against his greater mastery of the true martial Dao Body. Back when the true martial Dao Body was at lesser mastery, the martial Dao Prime Body fought against Yen Zui and the others and used up all his trump cards. He had to rely on the Hell Suppression Tripod to suppress a half-step grotto heaven. But now that he had attained greater mastery of the true martial Dao Body, he could sweep through all half-step grotto heavens barehanded. He was the number 1 beneath the grotto heaven realm. However, if he was up against a true grotto heaven realm expert, the martial Dao Prime Body did not know if he could take such an opponent head-on without the use of the Hell Suppression Tripod. After all, the true martial realm only corresponded to the perfected 1 realm of the immortal, Buddhist and Fiend Daos and had yet to reach a higher level of power. As for the grotto heaven realm, the comprehension and power one controlled after condensing the grotto heaven realm had completely surpassed the perfected 1 realm and was at another level. That was a difference that was impossible to make up for, akin to heaven and earth. Of course, the martial Tao prime body was a variable after all. He smelted all dharmic arts, absorbed 100 sutras, established the martial Tao and passed through the 10th tribulation. He was the first in history. If he could cultivate the true martial Tao body to a perfected state, he would have sufficient confidence to break through the barrier between the two major cultivation realms and suppress ordinary immortal kings of the Grotto Heaven realm. On the battlefield, 2 half-step Grotto Heaven experts were killed by 2 punches from the martial Tao prime body, causing the expressions of many perfected fiends to change. The fiends finally snapped out of their greed and realized what sort of a terrifying existence the person they had provoked was. If even a half-step Grotto Heaven expert could not withstand a single punch from him, who else could? Everyone's lives depended on a single thought from desolate Marshall. Whoosh! There were more than 100 perfected fiend experts from the 7 heaven-grade fiend sects and Firmament Ascension Palace. Instantly, they dispersed and fled in all directions, trying to escape. The martial Tao prime body had long locked onto the few young masters of the fiend sects. Swoosh! The young master of Yellow Springs Villa did not manage to escape far before the martial Tao prime body caught up to him and killed him with a single punch, snatching the black incomplete diagram. The figure of the martial Tao prime body did not stop at all. In the blink of an eye, he arrived behind the young master of Godfiend Ridge and punched without saying anything. Bang! The punch struck his back. The young master of Godfiend Ridge was shattered by the martial Tao prime body and the latter obtained the black incomplete diagram. The figure of the martial Tao prime body flashed carelessly on the battlefield. Each time he attacked, there would definitely be blood and the young masters of the fiend sects were scared out of their wits. Chapter 2530, 2530 Fiend Kings Alarmed. 2530 Fiend Kings Alarmed. Finally, the young master of a fiend sect reacted and threw the black incomplete diagram on the ground before turning to flee. The martial Tao prime body glanced at that person and picked up the black incomplete diagram without chasing after him. When the young master of Heavenly Evil sect saw that, he shuddered and did the same. He threw down the black incomplete diagram and turned to flee, hoping to survive with this move. Unfortunately, the martial Tao prime body did not give him a chance and chased after him in a few steps, killing him with a single punch. Earlier on, this person caused trouble outside the Fiend Cave, wanting to make use of Firmament Ascension Palace to deal with the martial Tao prime body. At that time, the martial Tao prime body ignored him. Now that this person provoked him again, he could only send the latter to the afterlife. In the blink of an eye, 4 of the 7 fiend sect young masters died. 3 of them abandoned the black incomplete diagram and escaped from the battlefield successfully. The remaining perfected fiends fled as well. The group of cultivators that followed behind did not know what was going on inside. When they saw the perfected fiend experts of Firmament Ascension Palace and Black Fiend sect scared out of their wits and fleeing, they panicked and retreated one after another. A strange scene appeared in the Fiend Cave. Most of the cultivators did not know what happened and fled hurriedly behind when they saw the chaos ahead. Hurry and escape. Half-step Grotto Heaven experts died beneath. What happened? Who killed them? I'm not sure. It seems like a terrifying creature has appeared. This is bad. A terrifying creature was born deep underground and is on a massacre. In the chaos, the information became more ridiculous. Later on, when many cultivators escaped from the Fiend Cave, there were all sorts of sayings. 1,000,000 terrifying living beings have awakened underground and are eating flesh. This is bad. I heard that a fiend emperor awakened and broke through his coffin to start a massacre. The millions of fiend cultivators who stood guard outside the entrance of the Fiend Cave were startled and they saw many fiend cultivators fleeing in panic while shouting wildly. Your Highness, let's retreat first. A few perfected fiends protected Prince Ling Xian and retreated. The moment Firmament Ascension Palace moved, Black Fiend sect and the other 6 major fiend sects retreated as well. No other sects and factions dared to linger when they saw that and everyone followed suit. Don't panic. The void tore in midair and more than 20 figures appeared. They descended with tremendous might and looked down at the world. More than 20 Grotto Heaven Realm Fiend Kings. What nonsense are you talking about? Fiend King Hidden Space of Firmament Ascension Palace had a cold gaze as he surveyed his surroundings and harumphed coldly. The Fiend Emperor buried beneath has died tens of millions of years ago. Even a great emperor won't be able to live for so long. Fiend King Hidden Space was a supreme Fiend King of Firmament Ascension Palace. This time round, there were 7 Fiend Kings from Firmament Ascension Palace alone. Among them, there were even 2 Supreme Fiend Kings. The other 7 Heaven-grade Fiend sects had 2 or 3 Fiend Kings each. Among them, 4 Supreme Fiend Kings who once fought against Desolate Marshal, the Sect Master of Black Fiend Sect, Fiend Celestial Black Heaven, the Villa Master of Yellow Springs Villa and the Territorial Lord of God Fiend Ridge, were present as well. The temperament, judgment, knowledge and experience of the Fiend Kings naturally far surpassed the Fiends present. This tomb of the Fiend Emperor had been sealed for tens of millions of years. If there were otherworldly soldiers and ghosts, it would be normal. However, there could not be any living beings. Before long, the perfected fiends and 3 young masters of Firmament Ascension Palace and the 7 major fiend sects escaped at the back. When Fiend Celestial Black Heaven, the sect master of Heavenly Evil Sect and the others did not see their young masters, they gradually sensed that something was amiss and their expressions darkened. What's going on? Prince Ling Xian hurried forward and asked, what happened inside? A perfected fiend of Firmament Ascension Palace said with lingering fear, panting, Desolate Marshal was the first to rush in and he beat us to all the treasures. That person alone took away all the treasures of 2 halls in succession. Duan Ming, Song Shi and a few other young masters of the fiend sects could not take it lying down and went forward to reason with him. Unexpectedly, he suddenly went on a killing spree. Fellow Taoists Duan Ming and Song Shi were killed by him in 2 punches. 2 punches? Prince Ling Xian narrowed his eyes and his pupils constricted. Fiend Celestial Black Heaven, the Villa Master of Yellow Springs Villa and the few other Supreme Fiend Kings exchanged glances as the same thought crossed their minds. Desolate Marshal was much stronger than before. The perfected fiend glanced at Fiend Celestial Black Heaven and the others before continuing. The young masters of Black Fiend Sect, Yellow Springs Villa, God Fiend Ridge and Heavenly Evil Sect were all killed by Desolate Marshal. Desolate Marshal. The gazes of Fiend Celestial Black Heaven and the other Fiend Kings were cold. Indeed, they were wary of Emperor Bo Sun. But now, there were countless treasures buried beneath the Fiend Cave. Who wouldn't be tempted? Furthermore, if Desolate Marshal could truly die in the hands of this Fiend Cave, even Emperor Bo Sun might not know who did it. The tomb of the Fiend Emperor blocked all detection and they could not probe even with their spirit consciousnesses. Are there any other dangers down there? Firmament Ascension Palace's Fiend King Hidden Space asked in a deep voice. No, the journey was smooth and there were no traps, ambushes, or puppets. That's the reason why Desolate Marshal beat us to it time and again to snatch the treasures without any reservations. The perfected fiend replied hurriedly. Desolate Marshal is arrogant and conceited. He has gone overboard with his bullying. When Prince Ling Xian heard that Duan Ming and Song Shi, the 2 half-step Grotto Heavens, were dead, his killing intent towards the Martial Dao Prime body intensified as he said slowly, since there's no danger in the Fiend Cave below, there's no need for you Fiend Kings to hold back. Follow me into the tomb and hunt down Desolate Marshal. All right. Fiend King Hidden Space and the others agreed without hesitation. Apart from protecting Prince Ling Xian, they had another motive for coming here. They wanted to look for some opportunities in the tomb of the Fiend Emperor. If they could break through and condense perfected Grotto Heavens, they would be a step closer to the Emperor realm. Prince Ling Xian looked at the Fiend Cave with a dark gaze and grit his teeth. Desolate Marshal, I'm going to let you know who calls the shots in the Fiend domain today. Ling Xian waved his hand and Hidden Space and the other Fiend Kings of Firmament Ascension Palace surrounded him before entering the Fiend Cave at the same time. Fiend Celestial Black Heaven, the Villa Master of Yellow Springs, the Territorial Lord of Godfiend Ridge, the Sect Master of Wind Fiend's Sect and the other Fiend Kings did not hesitate and charged into the Fiend Cave right after. After a while, some of the fiends that were lingering outside the Fiend Cave finally could not hold it in any longer and charged in as well. Thereafter, the fiends swarmed forward once more. In the depths of the Fiend Cave, the Martial Dao Prime Body collected the 7 black incomplete diagrams and picked up the many storage bags on the ground. He took a casual look and put them away. None of the treasures in those storage bags were worthy of his attention. He was prepared to return to Tianhuang's sect and place the treasures there. His gaze landed on the 7 black incomplete diagrams. Among the many treasures, the only things that interested him were the 7 black incomplete diagrams. Strange enough, when he gathered the 7 black incomplete diagrams, they stuck together on their own without any misalignment. Chapter 2531, 2531 Reunion. 2531 Reunion. Of course, after the 7 black incomplete diagrams were connected, the diagrams still looked incomplete. The Martial Dao Prime Body's heart skipped a beat as he took out the black incomplete diagram in his storage bag. Without his control, the black incomplete diagram seemed to have a mind of its own and left his hands, connecting to the 7 black incomplete diagrams. The incomplete diagram looked almost complete, as though it was missing a corner. There were blood-colored marks drawn on the incomplete diagram. The Martial Dao Prime Body took a closer look. It looked like a map of the gigantic tomb beneath the Fiend Cave. Furthermore, the map seemed to be pointing to a location in the underground tomb, guiding him there intentionally. He was in no hurry. Instead, he walked around the Fiend Cave and passed by a few more palaces. Indeed, the many treasures placed in the palaces were swept away. This trader of Firmament Ascension Palace sure has a huge appetite. The Martial Dao Prime Body thought to himself. Before long, the ears of the Martial Dao Prime Body twitched. He could sense a terrifying and powerful aura behind him, as though many experts were rushing in his direction. If he was not wrong, it should be the return of the group of people from Firmament Ascension Palace. However, the fact that they dared to return this time round meant that they were definitely accompanied by Fiend Kings of the Grotto Heaven realm. The Martial Dao Prime Body frowned slightly. Given his current combat strength, it would be difficult for him to gain any advantage against a Fiend King even if it was only one who had condensed a minor Grotto Heaven. The Martial Dao Prime Body matched the map and moved, prepared to avoid the group of them as he headed to the left. Suddenly, he heard the pleasant laughter of a young girl. It seemed to have a bewitching magic that made one's heart skip a beat and they could not help but immerse themselves in it. The Dao heart of the Martial Dao Prime Body was firm as a rock and unshakable. Under normal circumstances, such a bewitchment technique could not affect him at all. However, he was still shocked when he heard that laughter. "Bitch, it's you." Ling Xian's voice sounded with endless rage. "Young master, I know my mistake now. Can you not be so fierce?" The girl's voice sounded, filled with grievance. Many cultivators at the back could not see the girl. However, it was as though a pitiful girl was appearing before them, crying and begging. Instantly, a sense of pity rose in the hearts of the fiends. In fact, they even wanted to stand out and protect the girl at all costs. "Why, you really know your mistake now?" Ling Xian's tone softened as well, but he was still wary. "Your Highness, you must not be bewitched by this demoness. Wake up, wake up." Fiend King Hidden Space placed his finger on Ling Xian's forehead and hollered softly. His voice contained the divine might of the Buddhist monasteries and it was like a hammer striking his head. Ling Xian shuddered and his eyes regained their clarity. Fiend King Hidden Space said, "Your Highness, be careful. The fiend technique of this demoness is inherited from an ancient great emperor and can bewitch one's heart. You must protect your Dao heart and not be bewitched by her again." Ling Xian nodded hurriedly. His apocalyptic fiend diagram was taken away by this woman in a daze. By the time he reacted, it was already too late. Hee hee. The girl chuckled and said mockingly, Ling Xian, you're truly stupid. You want to be my Dao companion with your puny capabilities? I think you're too stupid to even be worthy of carrying my shoes. Little bitch. Ling Xian cursed, once I capture you, I'll definitely torture you day and night. I'll let you witness my capabilities. Tui. Someone like you? The girl was extremely disdainful and spat softly, look at your wobbly footsteps and weak demeanor. It's clear that you've definitely got no substance beneath. For some unknown reason, Ling Xian did not feel angered at all after being scolded like that. Instead, an evil fire burned in his heart and he felt his bloodline expand and his mouth go dry. In his heart, desolate martial, treasures in the fiend cave and all opportunities and encounters no longer seemed to matter. Right now, he only wanted to capture this demoness. That statement attracted the attention of Ling Xian. Initially, Ling Xian was standing at the front and did not notice the martial Dao prime body. When he heard that, he turned around slowly and glared at the martial Dao prime body with an unfriendly expression through the crowd. Desolate Martial is here too. Ling Xian nodded slowly with a cold glint in his eyes. Good timing, good timing. Over the years, Desolate Martial's reputation in the fiend domain had already surpassed his. In fact, there were many rumors that said that Desolate Martial was the de facto supreme perfected fiend, that was even more unacceptable for Ling Xian. The fight for the perfected fiend ranking was hosted by Firmament Ascension Palace. Although Yan Zui was dead, the fight for the new perfected fiend ranking had yet to begin. What rights did this person have to be assumed as the top of the perfected fiend ranking with the title of supreme attached to him? In a flash, Ling Xian was prepared to cause trouble for the martial Dao prime body. However, the perfected fiends behind him exchanged glances and advanced one after another to stop Ling Xian. Prince, please calm down. There's nothing to fear about Desolate Martial. There's no need to use a sledgehammer to crack a nut. That's right. Lord Ling Xiao instructed us to prioritize the fiend cave and not create unnecessary trouble. That's right. Once we obtain the treasure in the fiend cave, Desolate Martial will be like fish on a chopping board waiting to be slaughtered by us. In reality, the perfected fiends were still wary of the martial Dao prime body. However, they could not express weakness verbally. Ling Xian nodded slightly and retracted his killing intent. Pausing for a moment, he seemed to have suddenly thought of something. Gritting his teeth, he asked hatefully, "Are you guys sure that the slut fled within?" Someone witnessed it personally. A perfected fiend said firmly, however, that slut is only a grade 5 heaven immortal. She definitely won't be able to withstand the sinister winds of the fiend cave. She must have died inside a long time ago and her essence spirit was destroyed without a corpse left. When he heard that, Ling Xian's eyes flashed with a hint of sadness. From his tone earlier on, he clearly hated this slut to the core. However, at that moment, his heart ached when he heard that the slut was dead. Not necessarily. Another perfected fiend consoled, "Your Highness, don't forget that that woman has an apocalyptic fiend diagram in her hands as well. This fiend cave created this diagram and with this diagram on her, she might be able to neutralize the sinister winds within." Sinister winds gusted at the entrance of the fiend cave. Many factions did not act rashly, waiting for the sinister winds to weaken or even dissipate. Otherwise, even the perfected fiends present could not withstand such strong sinister winds. Strange, why don't I see any fiend king experts? Logically speaking, the first time a fiend cave as such appears, there should be countless opportunities and treasures inside. Even fiend kings should be tempted. There were at least millions of cultivators in the vicinity of Biyao Mountain and that number was still increasing rapidly. However, there were indeed no fiend king experts among the many fiend cultivators. A fiend cultivator said in a deep voice, "Although the strongest cultivators in the vicinity are only perfected fiends, there are definitely many fiend king experts watching in secret. It's just that they haven't appeared yet." That's right. This is the first time that the fiend cave has appeared. Although no one has touched the opportunities and treasures inside, there are countless potential dangers. These fiend kings are smart and want us to test the waters. If a shocking treasure truly appears, they'll definitely appear and fight for it. Just as everyone was discussing, the martial Dao prime body suddenly moved and strode towards the entrance of the fiend cave. Chapter 2532, 2532 Slaying Fiend Kings. 2532 Slaying Fiend Kings. The Fiend King of Firmament Ascension Palace was the first to arrive. Against the attack of the Fiend King, the martial Dao prime body did not dare to be careless. However, when the Fiend King attacked, he did not summon his grotto heaven right away. He was not the only one. The 4 Fiend Kings charging over from behind did not release their grotto heavens either. The 5 of them were not being overconfident on purpose. In theory, Fiend Kings could crush perfected Fiend cultivators with a single finger. Furthermore, 5 Fiend Kings attacked at the same time. It would seem like they were making a fuss instead if they summoned their grotto heavens. Even grotto heaven realm experts would rarely summon their grotto heavens right away in a fight, let alone against a perfected fiend. Sensing that opening, the gaze of the martial Dao prime body intensified. For him, the grotto heaven of a king-level expert was the only thing he could not take head-on and defend against. After all, the grotto heaven was a crystallization derived from the various dermic Daos of the king-level experts throughout their lives. A grotto heaven had already surpassed the perfected one realm and was at a completely different level. They were the strongest methods of king-level experts. However, the minor grotto heaven fiend kings must be dreaming if they thought that they could kill Su Zimo in melee combat without releasing their grotto heavens. The martial Dao valued unlocking one's potential. The foundation of all dermic formulations was to strengthen oneself continuously and view oneself as heaven and earth without the use of external forces. Therefore, in the perfected one realm of the immortal, Buddhist and fiend Daos, Dao fruits were condensed. However, the martial Dao prime body condensed a Dao body. The profoundness of his dermic Dao was fused into the true martial Dao body, every single inch of his flesh and bones. Although the fiend kings nourished their bodies with their minor grotto heavens, they could not defend against the true martial Dao body of the martial Dao prime body. Against the attacks of the 5 fiend kings, the martial Dao prime body did not dodge. Instead, he channeled his blood chi and counterattacked with the rumbling sound of a tsunami. Instantly, 5 punches were released in succession to fight the 5 fiend kings head-on. You have a death wish. The Fiend King of Firmament Ascension Palace sneered. The Fiend King of Black Fiends sect pouted his lips in disdain. The struggles of a cornered beast. Boom! The 5 Fiend Kings collided against the fist of the martial Dao prime body. The interval between them was extremely short and there was almost only a single sound. The 5 of them shuddered and their eyes widened in disbelief. Their arms were already numb from that punch. Furthermore, the 5 Fiend Kings felt an unimaginable divine power surge into their bodies through their arms and their organs vibrated. The Fiend King of Firmament Ascension Palace suddenly opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. Of course, such injuries were not serious for a Fiend King. However, before he could react, the martial Dao prime body had already closed in and punched down twice in succession with an unstoppable might like a mountain. Bang! Bang! The Fiend King of Firmament Ascension Palace could only raise his arms to defend. However, his arm was snapped by 2 punches from the martial Dao prime body and his middle was now exposed. A third punch descended and hammered heavily on the top of his head. Bang! The Fiend King of Firmament Ascension Palace shuddered and his gaze froze with a shocked expression. Thereafter, his pupils dilated and his life force drained rapidly. The top of his head was still intact. However, his consciousness was already shattered by a single punch from the martial Dao prime body and his essence spirit was not spared either. It was destroyed on the spot and died. With just 4 punches, a Fiend King of Firmament Ascension Palace was killed by the martial Dao prime body on the spot. The expressions of the 4 Fiend Kings behind him changed when they saw that. The four of them did not have time to think and were about to summon their minor grotto heavens when the martial Tao prime body suddenly opened his mouth and released the secret skill of myriad being sound. Roar! Instantly, the tunnel echoed with the roars of dragons, tigers, phoenixes, cranes, wolves, dogs, apes and horses. It was as though millions of living beings were roaring at the same time. As the true martial Tao body advanced to greater mastery, the might of myriad being sound increased as well. Furthermore, it was difficult for myriad being sound to spread in such a relatively sealed tunnel. Instead, it reverberated continuously in the tunnel, causing its power to increase significantly. Although it could not injure the fiend kings present, they were shocked and slightly stunned. It was that moment of shock that allowed the martial Tao prime body to seize the opportunity to charge in front of the fiend king of the Black Fiend sect. He punched out and struck the other party's face. The fiend king of Black Fiend sect was overturned by a single punch from the martial Tao prime body and his face was mangled. His essence spirit was destroyed and he died on the spot. The other three fiend kings woke up quickly and did not dare to hesitate anymore. They summoned their minor grotto heavens one after another, wanting to make use of the grotto heavens' power to kill the martial Tao prime body. However, the grotto heavens of the three fiend kings dissipated the moment they were released before they could take shape. The three fiend kings were shocked. The grotto heaven was the ultimate technique and strongest trump card of king-level experts. However, the three of them failed to release it. With that slight delay, the martial Tao prime body attacked once more and threw 3 consecutive punches at the fiend king of God-Fiend Ridge. All of them were blocked by the fiend king. The martial Tao prime body took a deep breath and burst forth once more, punching 7 times in succession. The attacks were ferocious and dense like rain that was suffocating. The fiend king of God-Fiend Ridge did not even have the chance to summon his grotto heaven spirit treasure and was beaten to death by the 10 punches of the martial Tao prime body. Of course, the remaining 2 fiend kings managed to escape, albeit with bewildered expressions. What's going on? When Ling Xian and the others heard the commotion behind them, they turned back hurriedly and caught sight of the martial Tao prime body counterattacking and killing 3 fiend kings in succession. The many fiend kings at the front and back were shocked and in disbelief. A perfected fiend had actually crossed a major cultivation realm to kill 3 grotto heaven fiend kings. Even if the fiend kings present could not summon their grotto heavens, their physiques should be enough to kill all perfected fiends. However, what happened earlier on dealt a huge psychological blow to the fiend kings. The physical body of a perfected fiend can actually be cultivated to such an extent? He's even comparable to fiend kings? There's something strange about that lad's dermic Tao. It seems different from ours. What's going on? Divine powers and secret skills can't even be released down here. Was he just fighting in melee combat using his physique and bloodline? When the fiend kings realized the strangeness of this place, they did not dare to act rashly and discussed in secret. The remnant might of the dermic Tao remains in the tomb of the Fiend Emperor and has not dissipated for millions of years. It's only logical that there are various restrictions. Fiend King Hidden Space frowned and said deeply, however, I've never seen a tomb like this that can restrict the release of grotto heavens. Your Highness, I suggest that we leave this place immediately and think about it at length. After pondering for a moment, Fiend King Hidden Space felt uneasy and could not help but say, there's so many of us. What's there to be afraid of? Ling Xian harumphed coldly. That slut only has a single apocalyptic fiend diagram and yet she dares to move around casually here. Don't you have a complete fiend diagram with you? Fiend King Hidden Space nodded and did not persuade further. The expressions of Fiend Celestial Black Heaven and the others darkened. Not only did he fail to kill the martial Tao prime body, he even lost a Fiend King. For the Fiend sects, every single Fiend King could raise their factions by a level. To think that they would suffer a huge loss in the hands of the martial Tao prime body. Chapter 2533, 2533 Underground Ancient City. 2533 Underground Ancient City. Under normal circumstances, it was difficult for one to die at the Grotto Heaven realm. Given the capabilities of the martial Tao prime body, even if he used all his trump cards and even the Hell Suppression tripod, he would only be able to defeat a Fiend King at most in melee combat. There was no way he could kill 3 Fiend Kings in succession. However, the area beneath the Fiend Cave was way too strange. Not only could they not release divine powers or secret skills, even the Grotto Heavens of the Fiend Kings were suppressed and could not be released. As a result, the combat strength of the 3 Fiend Kings was greatly reduced and they were killed by the martial Tao prime body. The death of the 3 Fiend Kings caused the entire place to fall into a momentary silence. Even Fiend Celestial Black Heaven and the others did not know if there were any other strange things in the tomb of the Fiend Emperor and did not dare to act rashly. "Let's capture that slut first and not let her escape again," Ling Xian said in a deep voice. Fiend King Hidden Space and the other 5 continued to protect Ling Xian as they sped forward. The martial Tao prime body picked up the storage bags of the 3 Fiend Kings and followed. The expressions of Fiend Celestial Black Heaven and the other Fiend Kings darkened as they exchanged glances without saying anything. However, everyone had already arrived and naturally could not retreat. The dozens of Fiend Kings followed suit. A strange formation was formed in the tomb passage. The 7 of them from Firmament Ascension Palace sped at the front while the martial Tao prime body hung at the back alone. Behind him were more than 10 Fiend Kings. The 3 factions coexisted peacefully in this passage. After a while, a faint light appeared in front of them and they had already arrived at the end of the passage. Fiend King Hidden Space and the others escorted Ling Xian out of the passage and everything opened up before them. Ling Xian shuddered at the sight before him. Even Hidden Space and the other 3 Fiend Kings gasped slightly with shocked expressions and disbelief in their eyes. Up ahead, there was a gigantic ancient city that stood deep underground like a massive object, glaring at the group of cultivators that charged in. The ancient city was majestic and even surpassed the many immortal cities on the ground. If they had not seen it with their own eyes, it would be difficult to imagine that such an ancient city existed deep underground. Everyone realized that there was a high chance that the ancient city was the core of the Fiend Emperor's tomb. The true treasures, opportunities and inheritances should be in this ancient city. Everyone was invigorated and their gazes burned. Right then, a beautiful figure flashed past the top of the ancient city wall. It was Demoness Ji. "Go!" Ling Xian could not wait any longer and charged towards the ancient city. Fiend King Hidden Space and the others stood guard at the side while the martial Tao prime body, Fiend Celestial Black Heaven and the other Fiend Kings followed closely behind. In the blink of an eye, everyone arrived at the entrance of the ancient city. The strange thing was that there were 2 rows of humanoid clay guards standing on both sides of the city gate, wielding clay spears. There were also many clay guards standing on the city wall. They were densely packed and motionless. Some of them wielded bows and arrows and guarded the city wall. Some of them formed groups of 10,000 people that seemed to be patrolling the city walls. They looked orderly and made the place seem heavily guarded. "What the hell is that?" Ling Xian passed by and wanted to step forward and smash a clay figure. However, he was stopped by Fiend King Hidden Space. "Your Highness, don't act rashly. This ancient city looks a little strange." Fiend King Hidden Space had a guarded expression as he whispered, "Everyone, be careful." The martial Tao prime body ignored them and walked past the group from Firmament Ascension Palace and the others before entering the ancient city. When they saw the martial Tao prime body walk over without encountering any danger, Ling Xian's group and Fiend Celestial Black Heaven and the other Fiend Kings moved one after another and charged into the ancient city. There were all sorts of structures in the ancient city and it looked no different from the immortal cities on the ground. However, the streets of the ancient city were extremely empty and deserted. Apart from teams of clay guards, there was no one else. As the group of them traveled, the ancient city was filled with clay men guarding. There were already hundreds of thousands of them. As expected of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse. A Fiend King of Firmament Ascension Palace lamented, "Even if he dies, he has to build such an ancient city in the tomb and creates so many clay guards so that he can command thousands of fiend troops after his death. Fiend King Hidden Space suddenly frowned, as though he recalled something. Right then, a round of applause sounded from a group of more than 10,000 clay men patrolling at the front. How smart! Demoness G's voice sounded among the clay guards with a hint of mockery. However, do you guys think that these are just clay guards? Crack! Suddenly, a sound came from the clay guard, as though something had shattered. Creak! Immediately after, the sound intensified and spread through all the clay guards and the entire ancient city. Right in front of everyone, cracks appeared on the mud on the clay guards and they fell off, revealing guards with flesh and blood. Of course, there was no life in the bodies of the guards. However, the weapons in their hands were sharp and cold after the clay was removed. The eyes of the guards were filled with madness as they glared at the people who entered the ancient city with a murderous aura. Otherworldly soldiers that grew flesh and blood? Ling Xian frowned slightly. These are not otherworldly soldiers. Fiend King Hidden Space said sternly, even if otherworldly soldiers manage to condense flesh and blood, it will definitely be incomplete. There's no way they can be preserved in such a complete manner. These people were originally alive back then. They were sealed in the clay by Fiend Emperor Apocalypse with a supreme secret skill for tens of millions of years until they were awakened today. After tens of millions of years, those guards had naturally died. At that moment, the only thing that drove them was the final consciousness left in their minds by Fiend Emperor Apocalypse. Destruction, conquest and killing. Upon hearing Fiend King Hidden Space's words, everyone present shuddered and felt chills run down their spines. There were at least millions or even 10 million guards in this ancient city. However, back then, Fiend Emperor Apocalypse sealed these tens of millions of fiends and killed them alive as burial objects, burying them underground for tens of millions of years. It's no wonder why his title is Apocalypse. To think that he was able to do such a shocking thing. Ling Xian murmured softly with a hint of envy in his tone. Kill. 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 Countless awakened guards were controlled by the remnant thoughts in their minds and roared at everyone from Firmament Ascension Palace. Bang! Boom! On the long streets on all sides, ancient chariots sped over with a shocking might. More and more ancient city guards gathered over. It was a black patch with no end in sight. Against such a lineup, everyone present calmed down rapidly. Although there were many guards in the ancient city, most of their cultivation in the past was only at the earth and heaven immortal realm. At best, the strongest was only at the perfected fiend realm. Almost everyone present were Fiend King experts. Even if they could not release their grotto heavens, they could make use of their physiques, bloodlines and grotto heaven spirit treasures to kill their way out. Where's that slut? Ling Xian surveyed his surroundings, wanting to search for traces of Demoness G in the vast army of guards. However, there were too many guards and he could not even see Demoness G's figure. Your Highness, that woman should be dead. Fiend King Hidden Space said, that Demoness is only a grade 5 heaven immortal. It's almost impossible for her to survive the army of guards. Chapter 2534, 2534 I'm here to take you home. 2534 I'm here to take you home. After Fiend King Hidden Space said that, he closed his eyes and sensed his surroundings. Over there. Fiend King Hidden Space suddenly opened his eyes and his gaze intensified. Boom! Fiend King Hidden Space waved his robes and burst forth dozens of feet, beating up the ancient city guards in front of him and creating a spacious passage. At the end of the passage, Demoness G looked flustered and dodged behind an ancient city guard. Although she was clearly fleeing in an extremely sorry state, everyone felt that Demoness G had a graceful figure and charm. Even when she escaped, she looked stunning. The martial Dao Prime Body's heart skipped a beat. Demoness G's movement technique gave him a sense of déjà vu. Back when he condensed the true martial Dao body and attracted the true martial heavenly tribulation, an extremely powerful phantom appeared in the 10th tribulation. Among them, a white-robed woman wielding a long sword was enchanting and charming. Her movement technique was almost identical to Demoness G's. Seems like Demoness G has also obtained quite a bit of opportunities in the fiend domain over the years. The martial Dao prime body thought to himself. Among the many old friends who had ascended to Tianhuang mainland, Demoness G was the one he was least worried about. Given Demoness G's capabilities, it was almost impossible for anyone else to take advantage of her. It was already not bad if they were not played by her. One could not use their spirit consciousness beneath the fiend cave. Coupled with the fact that the ancient city guards were awakened and charged over with a massive commotion, Fiend King Hidden Space and the others lost track of Demoness G. Searching for someone in an army of 10 million was like searching for a needle in a haystack. However, Fiend King Hidden Space was certain that Demoness G could not have gone far. The reason why she lured everyone here intentionally was because she wanted to make use of the 10 million fiend army here to cause damage to the group from Firmament Ascension Palace. Out of a special mentality, she would most likely observe her masterpiece in the nearby darkness. That was the reason why Fiend King Hidden Space intentionally said that Demoness G was definitely dead. His goal was to expose Demoness G. Demoness G was extremely smart as well. Although she was indignant, she quickly realized that this should be Fiend King Hidden Space's bait and did not move. Unfortunately, her heart still skipped a beat when she heard Fiend King Hidden Space's words. Her heart was beating slightly more violently and Fiend King Hidden Space caught it instantly. He attacked right away and exposed her to everyone. Although the psychological warfare between both parties seemed short, it was extremely intense and they tested one another's guesses. In the end, Fiend King Hidden Space was slightly superior. Demoness, you're still too inexperienced. Fiend King Hidden Space looked at Demoness G, who was not far away, with a mocking gaze. In a flash, Demoness G hid in the army of guards. Strangely enough, none of the guards attacked her. Instead, they were fearless and charged towards Firmament Ascension Palace, Fiend Celestial Black Heaven and the others continuously. You're still thinking of escaping? Ling Xian sneered. Fiend King Hidden Space and the others charged the entire way and gave chase. Now that Demoness G's figure was exposed and she was locked onto by the 6 Fiend Kings of Firmament Ascension Palace, it was impossible for her to escape even if she wanted to. Demoness G. Right then, a call sounded from the chaotic ancient city. Demoness G shuddered and froze on the spot with a look of disbelief in her beautiful eyes. That name. How could it be? Demoness G turned around and saw a purple-robed man striding over. Although the purple-robed man wore a silver mask, Demoness G recognized him instantly when she saw his eyes. Demoness G bit her lips gently and her eyes reddened with tears. In the blink of an eye, the martial Dao prime body had already arrived before her. At that moment, it was like a dream. Why are you here, nerd? Demoness G's voice was slightly trembling as she sobbed. I'm here to take you home. The martial Dao prime body said gently. When she heard that, Demoness G could no longer hold it in and burst into tears. Right now, her mind was blank and she only wanted to cry. Back in Tianhuang mainland, as the pure maiden of the fiend sects, she cultivated the Pure Maiden Sutra and bewitched all living beings. She rarely revealed her true emotions. Be it anger, cuteness, joy, or sadness, they were all disguises. She had only revealed her true emotions in front of a few people and Su Zimo was one of them. In that short period of time, the remaining 6 Fiend Kings of Firmament Ascension Palace had already swept through the surrounding ancient city guards and surrounded the martial Dao prime body in Demoness G. When Ling Xian saw Demoness G's expression, his heart burned with jealousy. Gritting his teeth, he said, "So, this adulterous couple knows one another. That's perfect. Kill the man but leave the slut." Beneath the silver mask of the martial Dao prime body, his expression turned cold and his gaze turned sinister. "Let's run." Demoness G tugged at the wrist of the martial Dao prime body, wanting to find an opportunity to hide among the endless ancient city guards once more. However, the martial Tao prime body did not budge when she tugged at him. That Ling Xian bullied you before, right? Suddenly, the martial Tao prime body asked. Huh? Demoness Ji turned back and looked at the martial Tao prime body with misty eyes in confusion. The martial Tao prime body said indifferently, "Wait for me here for a moment. I'll go kill him." "Ah, don't." Demoness Ji was shocked and wiped away the tears in her eyes casually before saying hurriedly, "No, that donkey was so stupid that he was played like a fiddle by me. I even tricked him into giving me a treasure map that he had collected for many years. If nobody told him, he wouldn't have known that he had been deceived by me for so many years." Demoness Ji was afraid that the martial Tao prime body would rush forward and fight for her on impulse. After all, apart from Prince Ling Xian, there were 6 fiend kings present. Among them, 2 of them were supreme fiend kings. Demoness Ji had long heard about the martial Tao prime body. According to her understanding, the martial Tao prime body was only a perfected fiend and could not fight against fiend kings. "Let's leave quickly and ignore him," Demoness Ji urged again. When Ling Xian heard Demoness Ji's words, his face turned red from embarrassment as he hollered, "Slut, you still want to leave?" The martial Tao prime body removed Demoness Ji's hand. "Even calling you a slut is not allowed." The moment he said that, the feet of the martial Tao prime body hit heavily on the ground. With a boom, there was a loud explosion and the ground shook. The entire majestic ancient city seemed to be trembling. Countless ancient city guards paused in their attacks. Swoosh! The figure of the martial Tao prime body flashed and arrived before Ling Xian in the blink of an eye. It was way too fast. Ling Xian's pupils constricted. He had not expected that the martial Tao prime body would dare to attack him despite being surrounded by 6 fiend kings. This person was fearless and audacious. What was he trying to do? Was this person trying to kill him in front of 6 fiend kings? "Your Highness, watch out." The 2 fiend kings closest to Ling Xian arrived beside him immediately. One of them was the other supreme fiend king. At the same time, the other 4 fiend kings gave up on their pursuit of Demoness Ji and rushed towards the martial Tao prime body. Chapter 2535, 2535 Killing the Prince. 2535 Killing the Prince. Splash! The blood chi of the 2 fiend kings beside Ling Xian surged and the sound of a tsunami echoed from their bodies as they charged towards the martial Tao prime body. Bang! Boom! The bloodline of the martial Tao prime body surged and it was as though a volcano had burst forth from his body. His blood chi churned and a gigantic furnace with raging flames appeared around him, seemingly about to incinerate everything in the world. Peerless divine power, heaven and earth furnace. Divine powers and secret skills could not be used beneath the fiend cave. However, the peerless divine power of the martial Tao prime body was a bloodline phenomenon to begin with and was not restricted at all. The moment he attacked, the martial Tao prime body released his full strength, wanting to kill Prince Ling Xian under the encirclement of 6 fiend kings. Boom! The martial Tao prime body punched with his left hand and collided with a minor grotto heaven fiend king. The fiend king shuddered and felt a shocking force. He was sent flying by a single punch from the martial Tao prime body and spat out blood. In the tomb passage earlier on, the martial Tao prime body killed a minor grotto heaven fiend king in 4 punches without even using his bloodline phenomenon. Now that he had the augmentation of his bloodline phenomenon and his strength had increased exponentially, there was no way the fiend king of Firmament Ascension Palace could defend. Bang! The martial Tao prime body punched with his right hand and clashed against Supreme Fiend King Lu Tsang, who was on the other side. When Lu Tsang saw the menacing martial Tao prime body send a fiend king flying with a single punch, he did not dare to be careless and released his bloodline phenomenon right away. The 2 of them collided with their fists and the bloodline phenomenons clashed continuously, devouring one another. Lu Tsang was a supreme fiend king after all. He had nurtured his body in bloodline with the major grotto heaven for many years and was far superior to ordinary fiend kings. He could defend against the ferocious power of the martial Tao prime body. The gaze of the martial Tao prime body intensified as he took another step forward and released another punch. Good timing. Fiend King Lu Tsang hollered as well and punched out without retreating a half step. Right then, a bronze square tripod suddenly flew out from the glabella of the martial Tao prime body, emanating an ancient and heavy aura. Before the punch of the martial Tao prime body could be released completely, he suddenly changed tactics and transformed his fist into a palm. He grabbed the bronze square tripod and smashed it down against Fiend King Lu Tsang's fist. You! Fiend King Lu Tsang's eyes widened as he released his dermic treasure hurriedly. Unfortunately, he was still a step too late. Crack! Although his body was strong, he could not withstand the impact of the hell suppression tripod. Accompanied by the sound of bones cracking, Fiend King Lu Tsang's entire arm was snapped by the hell suppression tripod, revealing bones that were stuck to his flesh in a shocking manner. As a supreme Fiend King Lu Tsang was confident in his status. When he saw that the martial Tao prime body was barehanded, he naturally did not summon his dermic treasure right away. However, the martial Tao prime body had no intention of getting entangled with him. If he was delayed by Fiend King Lu Tsang and the other 4 Fiend Kings at the back caught up, it would be extremely difficult for him to kill Ling Xian. The martial Tao prime body wanted to crush the 2 Fiend Kings and kill Prince Ling Xian with a thunderous might. One of Fiend King Lu Tsang's arms was crippled by the hell suppression tripod and he retreated hurriedly. With that retreat, Ling Xian was completely exposed. Pust! Ling Xian's expression changed starkly as he finally realized that even with the 6 Fiend Kings by his side, he was still in immense danger. Swoosh! 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 Hidden Space and the other 3 Fiend Kings summoned their Grotto Heaven spirit treasures hurriedly and attacked the martial Tao prime body. The martial Tao prime body tossed the hell suppression tripod behind his head and blocked the Grotto Heaven spirit treasures that were charging over. At the same time, he lunged towards Ling Xian. Surrounded by endless ancient city guards, there was nowhere to retreat and Ling Xian could only defend with all his might. As long as he could delay the martial Tao prime body for a moment and wait for the other 6 Fiend Kings to arrive, he could survive. Taking a deep breath of air, Ling Xian withdrew a mirror from his storage bag and used it as a shield. Let's see how many punches you can take. The martial Tao prime body ignored the mirror treasure that Ling Xian propped up and punched over. Crack! The mirror treasure shattered. With just a slight pause, the fist of the martial Tao prime body penetrated the mirror treasure and smashed heavily against the top of Ling Xian's head. Piak! It was as though a divine hammer had descended and a gigantic axe had split the mountains. Ling Xian's head was smashed into pieces by a single punch from the martial Tao prime body and his essence spirit was destroyed on the spot. Back at the entrance of the Fiend Cave, Ling Xian was severely injured by a casual punch from the martial Tao prime body and vomited blood. Right now, the martial Tao prime body had released his bloodline phenomenon, the heaven and earth furnace, and his strength had increased exponentially. Ling Xian could not defend against it at all and was killed on the spot by a single punch. At the same time, the Grotto Heaven spirit treasures of the 4 Fiend Kings finally broke through the obstruction of the hell suppression tripod and descended on the martial Tao prime body. Bang! Bang! The martial Tao prime body staggered from the smash of a gigantic seal and copper spear. 2 wounds appeared on his chest and abdomen with fresh blood dripping. The bloodline phenomenon of the heaven and earth furnace was shattered by the 4 major Grotto Heaven spirit treasures and dissipated before long. Ah! Demoness G exclaimed worriedly when she saw that. But soon, she realized that the martial Tao prime body stabilized himself rapidly and charged towards the 4 Fiend Kings with the hell suppression tripod in his hands instead. Unable to use their essence spirits and Grotto Heavens, the true power of the Grotto Heaven spirit treasures could not be unleashed either. Furthermore, the martial Tao prime body was shrouded by a bloodline phenomenon. Although the 4 major Grotto Heaven spirit treasures injured him, his foundation was not hurt. For the true martial Tao body, such an injury could be ignored. In fact, the martial Tao prime body did not even have to repair it intentionally. The endless dermic Tao runes contained in the true martial Tao body alone could heal his wounds. Wah! The hearts of Hidden Space and the other 3 Fiend Kings skipped a beat. If they had not seen it personally, the 4 Fiend Kings would not have believed that the martial Tao prime body was made of flesh and blood. After enduring the 4 major Grotto Heaven spirit treasures head-on, he actually dared to charge towards them as though nothing had happened. Fiend King Hidden Space could see everything clearly. A thin layer of flames appeared on the wounds on the martial Tao prime body and he stopped bleeding before long. The flames seemed to surge with a mysterious glow that contained some dermic Tao runes. Those wounds were healing at a visible speed. By the time the martial Tao prime body arrived before the 4 Fiend Kings, his injuries were more than half healed. Bang! 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 The martial Tao prime body had an aggressive aura as he raised the hell suppression tripod and smashed it towards the 4 Fiend Kings in an incomparably ferocious manner. Initially, the 4 Fiend Kings could have an absolute advantage if they joined forces. However, at that moment, they could not help but feel fearful against the frenzied attacks of the martial Tao prime body. After all, 3 Fiend Kings died in the hands of the martial Tao prime body earlier on. With the death of the prince, the 4 Fiend Kings were flustered and the martial Tao prime body found an opportunity to break through the obstruction and return to Demoness G's side. When Fiend Celestial Black Heaven and the others saw that, they were secretly speechless. Desolate Marshal was way too ferocious. He had actually slaughtered the prince under the protection of 6 Fiend Kings. On the contrary, Fiend Celestial Black Heaven and the others were relieved. If nothing went wrong, Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao would definitely be alarmed with the death of Prince Ling Xian. At that time, even without them making a move, Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao would take revenge for his son and kill Desolate Marshal. Even if Desolate Marshal's backing, Emperor Bo Sun, was alarmed and Desolate Marshal was lucky to survive, it would not matter. Once the Fiend Emperors appeared and fought, a bloodbath would definitely break out in the Fiend domain. That would be a good opportunity for them to rise in the chaos. Chapter 2536, 2536 Apocalyptic Fiend Sutra. 2536 Apocalyptic Fiend Sutra. Demoness G was both surprised and delighted when she saw the martial Tao prime body kill Ling Xian and return alive. The martial Tao prime body summoned the hell suppression tripod and attempted to break through the space here, wanting to bring Demoness G with him back to Avicii. However, the hell suppression tripod merely created a ripple when it struck the void. It could not break through the void to create a spatial tunnel connected to Avicii. The martial Tao prime body had a calm expression and was not surprised. In truth, when he saw that the few Fiend Kings were unable to support their Grotto Heavens in the tomb passage previously, he had a rough guess that he would most likely not be able to teleport away from here at any moment. To be precise, any spatial technique could not be released within the Fiend Cave. He vaguely thought of a possibility. However, the situation was critical and the 2 of them had yet to escape from danger. Without hesitation, he could only flee with Demoness G first. Firmament Ascension Palace still had 6 Fiend Kings and there were about a dozen Fiend Kings from Black Fiend Sect and the other Fiend sections. If they were to join forces, he could still protect himself with the hell suppression tripod, but he could not ensure Demoness G's safety. That way. Demoness G was extremely smart and reacted quickly, pointing to the depths of the ancient city. The martial Tao prime body did not reply and extended his arm, holding Demoness G's slender and soft waist gently as he sped forward. Although Demoness G's movement technique was exquisite, she was far inferior to him in terms of speed. Strange enough, the ancient city guards ignored the martial Tao prime body and Demoness G. Instead, they charged towards Firmament Ascension Palace and the Fiend Kings of the 7 Fiend sections. On second thought, the martial Tao prime body guessed a possibility. Demoness G and he both had the black incomplete diagram. That was the reason why the ancient city guards would not attack them. The 6 fiend kings of Firmament Ascension Palace had grim expressions. Under their protection, the prince was forcefully killed by a perfected fiend. If Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao knew about it, the 6 of them might be punished. When they saw the martial Tao prime body and Demoness G escape, Fiend King Hidden Space and the others did not dare to hesitate and hurriedly put away Ling Xian's corpse before chasing after him. Now that the prince was dead, all the more they could not let desolate Marshal escape. However, divine powers and secret skills could not be used in the ancient city beneath the Fiend Cave. The Fiend Kings could not catch up to the martial Tao prime body with just the power of their physiques and bloodline. Furthermore, there were endless ancient city guards obstructing them. Fiend King Hidden Space had a complete apocalyptic fiend diagram with him and the surrounding ancient city guards would not attack him. However, he could only barely keep up with the martial Tao prime body such that he would not lose them. The ancient city was way too huge and the martial Tao prime body carried Demoness G for a full 2 hours before they caught sight of a gigantic palace at the end of the ancient city. This should be the chamber of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse. Let's hide inside, Demoness G said. The martial Tao prime body and Demoness G entered the Fiend Emperor's chamber and looked over. They could not help but freeze on the spot. Upon entering the chamber, the first thing they saw was an empty hall. There were nothing but 9 palace doors on the walls around the hall. It was dark and deep within, leading to unknown places. Typically, for such an arrangement in a tomb, only one of the 9 palace doors would lead to life. If they made a wrong move, there was a high chance they would die here. The 2 of them could not be certain for a moment. Demoness G said, if only I had the complete apocalyptic fiend diagram. There should be some hints. What does the complete apocalyptic fiend diagram mean? The martial Tao prime body's heart skipped a beat as he suddenly asked. Demoness G explained, tens of millions of years ago, Fiend Emperor Apocalypse died. It said that when the Fiend Emperor died, his skin turned into 18 apocalyptic fiend diagrams that scattered all over the fiend domain. Every single fiend diagram contains a portion of the Apocalyptic Fiend Sutra. It said that if you can gather all 18 fiend diagrams, you'll be able to obtain the complete Apocalyptic Fiend Sutra. Everyone claims that the Apocalyptic Fiend Sutra is comparable to the taboo mystic classics. However, for so many years, no one has ever gathered all 18 fiend diagrams. The martial Tao prime body frowned slightly and murmured, there are 18 complete apocalyptic fiend diagrams? Not really. Demoness G said, there are 2 sections to the Apocalyptic Fiend Sutra. Once you gather 9 fiend diagrams, a complete section will appear. 9? The eyes of the martial Tao prime body lit up. Demoness G did not notice the abnormality of the martial Tao prime body. She took out a black incomplete diagram from her storage bag and continued, unfortunately, I only managed to swindle one from Ling Xian. The martial Tao prime body said, what a coincidence. I have 8 here. He had a fiend diagram to begin with. Later on, he hunted down a few young masters of the fiend sects and gathered a total of 8 fiend diagrams. Coupled with the fiend diagram in Demoness G's hands, there were a total of 9. Ah! Demoness G exclaimed softly with a delighted expression. The moment the martial Tao prime body took out the 8 fiend diagrams, the fiend diagram in Demoness G's hands left her hand and connected to the 8 fiend diagrams. Unfortunately, there was no apocalyptic fiend sutra on it and there were only marks that resembled a map. Demoness G said, I heard that Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao had 9 incomplete diagrams that formed the first section of the Apocalyptic Fiend Sutra. That was also the reason why he was able to become an emperor. However, this time round, something on the incomplete diagrams changed and the Fiend Sutra on them disappeared. That was why Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao was willing to hand the first section to Fiend King Hidden Space and the others so that they could bring people here to check things out. The martial Tao prime body looked at the marks on the 9 fiend diagrams and suddenly said, this map looks a little like this chamber. According to the instructions on it, we should take the second palace door on the left. Demoness G also noticed the direction on the fiend diagram and was delighted. Let's hurry and leave. The martial Dao prime body in Demoness G moved and charged into the second palace door on the left, disappearing before long. Fiend King Hidden Space had the fiend diagram with him and would not be stopped by the ancient city guards. He was the first to arrive. When he entered the hall and saw the same 9 palace doors, he could not help but frown. The hall was empty without anyone around. It was clear that Desolate Marshal and Demoness G had already escaped into one of the palace doors. Fiend King Hidden Space was unable to judge which it was and did not dare to budge in casually. He could only guard the entrance of the chamber and wait for the others from Firmament Ascension Palace to catch up. After a while, Fiend King Lutsong and the others finally charged out of the obstruction of the ancient city guards. They were covered in blood and panted. It took 2 hours just to advance without any obstacles. The ancient city guards were endless as they charged over. Indeed, they had expended a lot of energy after fighting for more than 2 hours. Strange enough, when the ancient city guards arrived before the chamber, they stopped in their tracks and none of them dared to barge in. Even though they were long dead, in their final thoughts, this was also a forbidden ground that could not be trespassed. The dozens of fiend kings such as Fiend Celestial Black Heaven and the others fought their way out and finally arrived. Everyone swallowed a few immortal pills and rested for a while. Given their physiques and bloodlines, they would recover before long. Chapter 2537, 2537 Coffin. 2537 Coffin. Hidden Space, why aren't you entering? After resting for a while, Fiend King Lutsong asked. There are 9 palace doors. I don't know which one they entered. Fiend King Hidden Space replied. The first thing that everyone thought of was to split up and search. However, that would lead to an unavoidable problem. There was a limit to the number of people present. Once they separated, there would only be 3 Fiend Kings in each palace door. If they encountered Desolate Marshal who wielded the Hell Suppression Tripod, they might even be killed instead. The many Fiend Kings present were meticulous and did not express anything. Fiend King Lutsong pondered for a moment and analyzed. According to this setup, there should only be a single way out of the 9 palace doors. It's fine as long as we determine which one is the right one. If Desolate Marshal and Demoness G chose the wrong path, they'll definitely die without us even attacking. If they were lucky enough to choose the right path, we'll definitely be able to catch up to them still. Exactly. Fiend King Hidden Space nodded. There are a total of 9 palace doors. Which should we choose? Don't you have the apocalyptic fiend diagram with you? Take it out and see if there are any clues on it. Fiend King Lutsong said. Fiend King Hidden Space was enlightened and hurriedly took out the complete apocalyptic fiend diagram. Hidden Space and Lutsong focused their gazes. There was indeed some guidance left behind on the fiend diagram. The 4th palace door on the right. Hidden Space and Lutsong exchanged glances and charged towards the palace door with the 4 Fiend Kings of Firmament Ascension Palace. Fiend Celestial Black Heaven and the other Fiend Kings did not dare to enter recklessly. They exchanged glances and followed behind the Fiend Kings of Firmament Ascension Palace. After the Martial Dao Prime Body and Demoness G entered the palace door, they continued forward. Before long, another hall appeared before them. Similarly, there were 9 palace doors and the 2 of them were faced with a choice once more. They took out the apocalyptic fiend diagram and compared it. The 2 of them quickly made a judgment and headed towards the palace door in the middle. There were no dangers along the way. After speeding for a while, the 2 of them arrived at yet another hall with 9 palace doors around them. Are we just taking detours? Demoness G frowned slightly. No. The Martial Dao Prime Body had a calm expression. There were murals around the 3 halls earlier on and the murals in each hall were different. Alright, let's continue then. The two of them entered a palace door according to the guidance of the fiend diagram. With that, the two of them would meet the same choices each time they arrived somewhere else. On the other side, the fiend kings experienced an extremely similar encounter. However, the two parties grew increasingly distant in this gigantic and complicated chamber and did not meet. Finally, after passing by the 9th hall, the martial Dao prime body in Demonis G arrived at an empty chamber with a circular dome. The chamber was sealed and there was no other way out. In the middle was a gigantic coffin that was half the height of a human. Apart from that, there was nothing else. When she saw the coffin, Demonis G suddenly laughed and turned to look at the martial Dao prime body with sparkling eyes. "What are you laughing at?" the martial Dao prime body asked. "I suddenly thought of something." Demonis G smiled brightly. "Do you still remember when we first met in Tianhuang mainland and I invited you to the inheritance ground of the fiend sects?" The martial Dao prime body had a dazed expression and recalled the past instantly. Demonis G smiled. "At that time, we came to the depths of the ground and saw a coffin as well. Wasn't it similar to this scene before us?" The martial Dao prime body nodded slightly and turned to exchange glances with Demonis G. An indescribable feeling rose in their hearts at the same time. In the lower worlds, when the two of them first met, they entered the underground together and saw a stone coffin. After ascending to the upper world, the first time the two of them met, they ran underground and saw a coffin. However, at that time, the coffin was coiled with chains and floated in the blood pool with monk Daming sealed within. The surroundings were filled with blood qi and the atmosphere was terrifying. It was different from the silence before them. Demonis G continued, "At that time, a fiend appeared in that coffin and went on a massacre. The two of us had to hide in the stone coffin in the end to escape the calamity. At that time, the two of them were squeezed in that cramped stone coffin and it was inevitable that their skin would touch in a lustful manner." When Demonis G mentioned this, the martial Dao prime body recalled the scene but did not reply. Demonis G smiled and said in a half-joking manner, "Hey, do you think something will happen here as well? For example, Fiend Emperor Apocalypse might revive and crawl out from that coffin. If that's the case, both of us will have to die." The martial Dao prime body interrupted her directly. "A Fiend Emperor will kill us the same way he crushes 2 ants." Demonis G stuck out her tongue and no longer let her imagination run wild. At that moment, the two of them relaxed after escaping from the pursuit behind them and were in no hurry to look at the coffin. Demonis G glanced at the martial Dao prime body again and suddenly asked, "What did you mean by bringing me home?" At the mention of that, the martial Dao prime body's heart skipped a beat as he asked, "I was about to ask you. Although Tianhuang's sect is located in a remote corner, my reputation and Tianhuang's sects over the years should have spread to every corner of the fiend domain. Haven't you heard of it in Firmament Ascension Palace? The battle where Desolate Marshal killed the million-strong fiend army and the supreme perfected fiend alone had already spread through the heavenly world. It was impossible for Demonis G, who was in Firmament Ascension Palace, to not have heard of it." "Of course I have," Demonis G said. The martial Dao prime body asked, "Why didn't you look for us then?" Demonis G pouted her lips and said helplessly, "After I ascended, I was entangled by Ling Xian and he insisted on cultivating with me. As such, I could only try my best to delay him. Even if I heard the news of Tianhuang's sect, I wouldn't dare to look for you. Firmament Ascension Palace has a fiend emperor holding down the fort and is terrifyingly strong. I was worried that if I had looked for you guys, Tianhuang's sect might be implicated and the fiend emperor will vent his anger on you." The martial Dao prime body remained silent. Although this matter was indeed a little troublesome, it was inevitable right now. Even if he did not kill Ling Xian earlier on, there was no way the prince would let them off. If the fiend emperor was truly provoked, he could only release divine powers with Thunder Monarch Heavenly Wrath and shift Tianhuang's sect to Avicii temporarily to hide for a period of time. In the 9 Firmament Immortal Domain, there were 9 immortal emperors presiding over the 9 immortal domains. There were definitely other immortal emperors in the darkness of the 9 Firmament Immortal Domain that resided in seclusion. Together, there were definitely more than 10 of them. It was the same for the Pure Land of Bliss. There was naturally no way Ling Xiao was the only Fiend Emperor in the Fiend Domain. However, for the other Fiend Emperors, in order to pursue the Great Tao, they either lived in seclusion in the mountains or roamed everywhere. The only one who established a faction like this was Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao. The focus of the Fiend Tao was on taking the unorthodox path and being obsessed. They sought freedom to be unfettered, disregarding all etiquette and rules. Although establishing a faction could rule over millions of territories and possess torrential power, it would also tie oneself down and was vastly different from what the Fiend Tao wanted. It did not matter whether the Fiend Emperor cared for the lives of the fiends of his faction under his lead, it was inevitable that countless karma would be involved. That was the reason why most Fiend Emperors chose to roam the world alone. Chapter 2538 Destruction. 2538 Destruction. What are you thinking about? You haven't answered my question. Demoness Ji nudged the martial Tao prime body gently and urged. The martial Tao prime body snapped out of his stupor. The reason why Tianhuang's sect was established was so that those who ascended from the lower worlds could have a place to live in peace. You're from Tianhuang mainland. Tianhuang's sect is naturally your home. Tisk. Demoness Ji pouted her lips and could not conceal the disappointment in her eyes. Displeased with that answer, she muttered, a home is a place where the family is. The martial Tao prime body was silent for a moment. Yao Yan, you can treat me as family from now on. Demoness Ji's heart skipped a beat. In a flash, she closed into Su Zimo and tiptoed gently. The two of them faced each other and exchanged glances. Suddenly, she reached out and removed the silver mask on the face of the martial Tao prime body. Demoness Ji did not feel any joy when she saw that calm and familiar face. Instead, she felt uneasy. Why aren't you dodging? Demoness Ji frowned. If it was back in Tianhuang mainland, Su Zimo would have avoided her intimate actions a long time ago. Demoness Ji finally noticed the abnormality of the martial Tao prime body and the indescribable uneasiness in her heart intensified. She seemed to have understood something but did not dare to think about it carefully. Why are you suddenly so nice to me? Demoness Ji asked again. Although Su Zimo treated her well in Tianhuang mainland as well, he would not protect her as much as he did today. In fact, he did not even permit Ling Xian to call her a slut. The martial Tao prime body remained silent. What did you just call me? Demoness Ji's voice was already trembling slightly. Yao Yan, that was her name. However, ever since the two of them met, Su Zimo had always referred to her as a demoness and had never addressed her as such. Although the term sounded intimate, it sounded distant. The two of them were silent in the still chamber. Demoness Ji bit her lip tightly. After a long time, she asked slowly, my sister. She's already dead, right? Through her cultivation technique, Demoness Ji was best at bewitching her opponents and controlling their minds. Naturally, many people could not hide their thoughts from her either. She was sharp and quickly realized that there was only a single possibility why Su Zimo would suddenly treat her so well out of the blue. Yao Xue was already dead. It was more like guilt and compensation. Su Zimo would replace Yao Xue and continue to protect and take care of her in the future. Su Zimo had just said that she could treat him as family from now on because he had already regarded her as his younger sister. The martial Tao prime body did not meet Demoness Ji's eyes. He wore the Mara mask once more and whispered, Yao Xue's cultivation was stuck at the void reversion realm and she was not able to break through. Eventually, she exhausted her lifespan. Upon hearing the news, Demoness Ji felt a sense of sadness as tears rolled down her fair face silently. Before long, her clothes were drenched. The joy of reuniting with Su Zimo vanished instantly. Part of the sadness was because she heard that Yao Xue had passed on. Another part was because she realized the relationship between her and Su Zimo had changed. From now on, Su Zimo would view her as his younger sister, and it seemed like they were even closer. However, it might seem even more distant for her. Actually, Demoness Ji had never harbored any hope towards any outcome with Su Zimo. Even if Su Zimo became Dao companions with her sister, she would wish him well from the bottom of her heart and leave silently. However, after understanding Su Zimo's inner thoughts, she still felt a sense of disappointment. After a long time, Demoness Ji sniffed and rolled her eyes at the martial Dao prime body. I hope that my sister will be able to find a good husband in her next life and never meet a heartless person like you again. Next life. The martial Dao prime body recalled that Yao Xue did not age at all when she passed away. At the thought of that empty tomb, he could not help but mutter softly in a daze. Yao Xue was only a void reversion Dao being. Could there really be a next life? If there is, where is she now? At that moment, the martial Dao prime body suddenly had the urge to disregard everything and head to the netherworld. Perhaps, he might be able to find traces of Yao Xue there. However, Heavenly Wolf once said that no one who was alive could enter the netherworld. Let's see what's in this coffin. Demoness Ji perked up and waved at the martial Dao prime body before heading towards the gigantic coffin in the middle of the chamber. The martial Dao prime body suppressed his thoughts about Yao Xue for the time being and came to the coffin. If Fiend Emperor Apocalypse had any legacy preserved back then, it should be in this coffin. Make way. The martial Dao prime body gestured for Demoness Ji to retreat to the entrance of the chamber. If anything happened, she could escape at any moment. Demoness Ji obeyed and stood at the entrance of the chamber. The martial Dao prime body stood in front of the coffin and exhaled. Exerting strength in his arms, he pushed the lid of the coffin to the side slowly. The lid of the coffin was way too heavy. Even with the physique and bloodline of the martial Dao prime body, his full strength was only enough to move the lid. There was a loud bang. The lid of the coffin fell to the ground. In a flash, the martial Dao prime body arrived at the entrance of the chamber and looked towards the coffin from this location. After a while, there was no reaction from the coffin. Hee, you're worrying too much. Demoness Ji patted the shoulder of the martial Dao prime body and teased, what do you mean by the resurrection of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse? I was just scaring you earlier on. Why did you take it for real? The reason why the martial Dao prime body was so careful was not because of Demoness Ji's words. He merely felt that something was amiss right from the beginning. The reason why this Fiend Emperor's tomb was discovered was because the black fiend diagram in his hands had undergone a change and deliberately attracted a group of fiends here. However, almost nothing was discovered here. In fact, there weren't even any danger. The martial Dao prime body in Demoness Ji walked forward and leaped. Standing at the edge of the coffin, they looked inside and could not help but freeze slightly. There was only a pitch-black gigantic axe in the coffin. Apart from the gigantic axe, there were no other treasures. The martial Dao prime body even specially looked around the chamber, inside and outside the coffin, even inside and outside the lid, but he could not find any words. Fiend Emperor Apocalypse only left behind a gigantic axe after his death? I got it. Demoness Ji's eyes lit up. It said that when Fiend Emperor Apocalypse was born, his body was already burning with the flames of war and his eyes were filled with destruction. A phenomenon descended from the skies. The pursuit of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse is to tread on the heavens and conquer all worlds. Everywhere he passes, the flames of war will spread and destroy the world. It said that the two Emperor weapons used by Fiend Emperor Apocalypse are called Flames of War and Destruction. Flames of War was a spear while Destruction was a gigantic axe. If I'm not wrong, this gigantic axe should be the Destruction axe that belonged to Fiend Emperor Apocalypse. Stepping on the heavens, conquering all worlds. The martial Dao prime body frowned slightly. Fiend Emperor Apocalypse was so powerful. Very strong and extremely violent and belligerent. Demoness Ji said, back then, the heavenly world was completely occupied by him. The abyss between the nine firmament immortal domain and the fiend domain was split open by his destruction axe. The martial Tao prime body was secretly speechless. Almost splitting the entire heavenly world into two was indeed a little terrifying. Even Emperor Bo Sun, who was in his peak condition back then, might not have been able to do it. However, even such a ruthless person did not manage to become a great emperor in the end and could not escape death. Chapter 2539, 2539 Change. 2539 Change. The martial Tao prime body had not cultivated to that stage after all and did not know the insurmountable distance between an emperor and a great emperor. However, he had already realized that although there was only a single word difference between the two, the difference was like heaven and earth. Even with Dai Yu's capabilities, she could only be referred to as a demon empress and was not at the level of a great emperor. Everything else aside, Emperor Bo Sun alone and Fiend Emperor Apocalypse from tens of millions of years ago were all extremely talented and renowned ruthless people. However, none of those emperors could reach that level in the end. Up till this point of his cultivation, the martial Tao prime body had only heard of two great emperors, Great Emperor Longevity and Great Emperor Infinite. Although the Apocalyptic Fiend's Sutra was strong and was said to be comparable to the taboo mystic classics, it was not at the level of the taboo mystic classics. That was because Fiend Emperor Apocalypse did not manage to take that final step and become a great emperor even till his death. Heavenly Wolf once said that there was only a single great emperor in an era. One great emperor. Ever since Great Emperor Longevity passed away, a great emperor had not been born for a long time. In this generation, paragons rose and monster incarnates appeared. Even a powerful emperor like Bo Sun appeared once more and descended into the mortal world. In this generation, there was Bo Sun, Dai Yu, and even more emperors. There were at least 30 emperors in the heavenly world alone. Of course, within the trichiliocosm, there was a difference in strength and some weaker worlds might only have one or two emperors. Some of them were stronger like the heavenly world and had dozens of emperors. Even among so many emperors, there could only be a single great emperor in the end. The martial Tao prime body did not know which of the emperors would be able to look down on the world and create a brand new era. He was far from that level. However, he knew that the distance between him and Dai Yu was getting closer. One day, he would catch up to Dai Yu and walk shoulder to shoulder with her. There were many reasons why the martial Tao prime body had not looked for Dai Yu all these years. Firstly, his cultivation realm was not high enough. Although he had entered the true martial realm and attracted a 10th tribulation, at the end of the day, he was still only a perfected fiend. Even if he went to look for Dai Yu, he would not be of much help and might even incur her contempt. He could not get over his internal struggles either. Secondly, he had yet to completely resolve the matters here after establishing Tianhuang's sect. Tianhuang's sect only had a single Grotto Heaven realm expert and was relatively weak. Thirdly, his martial Tao was not perfected yet. It was extremely difficult to deduce and perfect the martial Tao, and the chances of that were slim. When he saw Dai Yu, his mental state would naturally change and it would be difficult for him to focus all his attention on deducing the martial Tao. The martial Tao prime body did not dare to be distracted. If he could not deduce and perfect the martial Tao, his Tao would stop here. Even if he met Dai Yu in the future, there would be nothing to be proud of. There was no way he could even help her or stand shoulder to shoulder with her. Just as the thoughts of the martial Tao prime body were running wild, Demoness Ji leaped into the coffin and gripped the gigantic black axe with both hands, wanting to lift it. Hiya! However, even though her face was flushed red, the gigantic black axe did not budge at all. After a few consecutive attempts, her arms ached and she was so tired that she leaned against the inner wall of the coffin. Sliding down slowly, she waved her hand. "No, I can't carry it. Seems like you're the only one who can inherit the opportunity left behind by Fiend Emperor Apocalypse. Let me try." The martial Tao prime body said and leaped into the coffin as well. Gripping the handle of the gigantic axe with one hand, he exerted strength and wanted to lift the ladder up. However, the gigantic black axe was still motionless, as though it was embedded at the bottom of the coffin. The martial Dao prime body frowned slightly. Even minor grotto heaven fiend kings would not be able to withstand this burst strength he just released. Even then, it was not enough to lift the gigantic axe. So weak. Demoness Ji snickered with a teasing expression. The martial Dao prime body took a deep breath and put away the black fiend diagram casually. He squatted down and gripped the handle of the gigantic axe with both hands, lifting it upwards. Finally, the gigantic black axe moved. However, it was almost negligible and was merely lifted slightly. How could this be? The martial Dao prime body was puzzled. Even emperor weapons of the past could not possess such weight after tens of millions of years, and the spirit consciousness within had long been destroyed. Right then, a black streak of light flew out from the storage bag of the martial Dao prime body and landed on the handle of the gigantic axe. It was the black fiend diagram formed by the 9 incomplete diagrams. At that moment it was wrapped around the handle of the gigantic black axe, circle after circle. The next moment, there was a boom. The gigantic black axe actually flew up on its own and looked down from above, as though a fiend body that was 100,000 feet tall was standing behind it. The head of the body was faintly visible in the clouds, and its gigantic palm wielded the gigantic black axe. 2 ferocious gazes burst forth from the clouds and locked onto the martial Dao prime body and Demoness Ji in the coffin. Phew! The gigantic black axe descended from the skies and cleaved down at the 2 people in the coffin in an incomparably ferocious manner. Before the axe blade descended, an unimaginable might had already enveloped the 2 of them. The gigantic black axe sealed all escape routes for the 2 of them. Pust! It was way too ferocious. Against that axe, the flesh of the martial Dao prime body felt a sharp pain. Demoness Ji could not withstand the pressure, and a blood mist sprayed out from her body. Her expression dimmed and her body went limp. Right now, it was too late for him to escape from this place with Demoness Ji. With a single thought from the martial Dao prime body, the hell suppression tripod flew out from his glabella. The martial Dao prime body turned the hell suppression tripod upside down and pulled Demoness Ji under the tripod. At the same time, crackling sounds came from his body. The martial Dao prime body transformed his bones and curled up, giving most of the tripod space to Demoness Ji. It was as though everything was predestined. This scene resembled the moment and the 2 of them met with danger in Tianhuang mainland. Although there was no fiend resurrected in this coffin, it was clear that the gigantic black axe wanted their lives as well. Furthermore, the 2 of them had nowhere to run and huddled together once more, hiding in the coffin under the hell suppression tripod. However, this time round, neither of them had any other thoughts. The gigantic black axe wanted to kill them, and this power was far beyond what the martial Dao prime body could withstand. What if the hell suppression tripod could not defend against it? Boom! The gigantic black axe descended and struck the bottom of the hell suppression tripod with a loud bang. Without hesitation, the martial Dao prime body reached out hurriedly and covered Demoness Ji's ears. The hell suppression tripod trembled violently and buzzed endlessly. The martial Dao prime body shuddered and felt a sharp pain in his ears. Unknowingly, scarlet blood seeped out. When Demoness Ji saw that, she had a worried expression and reached out instinctively, covering the ears of the martial Dao prime body tightly. The 2 of them exchanged glances. Both of them knew in their hearts that if the gigantic black axe continued slashing down, they would die from the impact, even if the hell suppression tripod could defend against it. If only there was an underground river beneath this fiend cave. Demoness Ji's imagination ran wild. Back in Tianhuang mainland, the 2 of them hid in that stone coffin and only managed to escape after falling into the underground river. Chapter 2540, 2540 Great Empress 9 Nether. 2540 Great Empress 9 Nether. Before the 2 of them could react, the gigantic black axe slashed down once more, as though it would not stop until the 2 of them were dead. Boom! Accompanied by a loud bang, the hell suppression tripod's handles pierced the bottom of the coffin and cracks appeared on the ground. The figures of the martial Dao prime body and Demoness Ji suddenly sank. The expression of the martial Dao prime body changed. Suddenly, he realized that the chamber was not on the ground and there seemed to be another world beneath. Without hesitation, the gigantic black axe could slash down once more at any moment. The martial Dao prime body took a deep breath and exerted strength in his legs, stomping his feet. Bang! Boom! The ground beneath their feet had long been shattered by the hell suppression tripod. Now that the martial Dao prime body stomped on it, it collapsed instantly and the two of them and the hell suppression tripod fell rapidly. The surroundings were dark. However, after entering this space, the martial Dao prime body and Demoness Ji felt the power that was initially suppressed on their essence spirits dissipate at the same time. The space beneath the chamber seemed to have escaped the range of the Fiend Emperor's tomb and divine powers and secret skills could be released. The two of them stabilized themselves hurriedly and the martial Dao prime body was relieved. As long as he broke free from the restrictions of the Fiend Emperor's tomb, he could make use of the hell suppression tripod to break through the void and escape with Demoness Ji. However, he was in no hurry. Instead, he retracted the hell suppression tripod and looked up through the entrance of the chamber above him. The strange thing was that the incomparably ferocious gigantic black axe that was chasing him to the ground of the chamber came to a sudden stop. After a brief pause, the gigantic black axe turned and left, vanishing. The actions of the gigantic black axe caused the martial Dao prime body to frown. He felt that something was amiss and felt uneasy. It was pitch black beneath the chamber. Even with the eyesight of the martial Dao prime body, he could only see around 10 feet in front of him. Although he could release his spirit consciousness, the range of his detection could not exceed 10 feet. The two of them descended slowly and nothing could be seen around them. It was extremely quiet and dead. Thankfully, not long after, the two of them landed on the ground once more and felt slightly relieved. What was up with the destruction axe earlier on? Demoness Ji could not help but ask. It was buried for tens of millions of years. To think that it could release such a terrifying power right after escaping. It's probably related to that apocalyptic fiend diagram. The martial Dao prime body said deeply, "You once said that Fiend Emperor Apocalypse died and his skin scattered before his death, forming 18 incomplete diagrams. I'm guessing that the aura of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse is still lingering on the fiend diagrams. That was why the guards in the ancient city did not dare to attack us." The destruction axe only awakened completely after it sensed the aura of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse as well. Demoness Ji was still puzzled and asked, however, why would the destruction axe attack us? Did the apocalyptic fiend diagram change this time round so that it could lure us here to awaken the Emperor weapon? The martial Dao prime body shook his head. He had many questions about this matter as well. However, he could guess one thing. If he was not wrong, the apocalyptic fiend diagram in the hands of Fiend King Hidden Space and the others should be guiding them to another Emperor weapon, the Flames of War Spear. As for those Fiend Kings, they would also face the attacks of the Flames of War Spear. The two of them walked together and scanned ahead slowly. Suddenly, Su Zimo thought of something and asked, "Right, I noticed that your movement technique is a little special and your bewitchment technique is even stronger than before. Did you obtain any opportunities?" Ever since the Green Lotus True Body ascended, he had obtained countless opportunities and encounters before cultivating to become a grade 7 heaven immortal. As for Demoness Ji, she was actually a grade 5 heaven immortal right now. It was clear that she had obtained unimaginable opportunities as well. Of course, what surprised the martial Dao prime body even more was that Demoness Ji's movement technique was extremely similar to the black-robed woman he faced when he received the true martial 10th tribulation. Demoness Ji nodded. "I obtained the inheritance memories of an ancient great emperor." Wah! The martial Dao prime body was speechless. The Green Lotus True Body merely obtained the tripod hell suppression tripod and the taboo mystic classic within. As for Demoness Ji, she obtained the inheritance memories of an ancient great emperor directly. The Green Lotus True Body was cultivating the Prajna Nirvana Sutra and often encountered questions. Up till now, he still had two secret skills that he could not comprehend completely. However, no one could explain it to him and he could only figure out his cultivation on his own. On Demoness G's side, it was equivalent to a great emperor imparting the Dharmic Tao personally. How could her cultivation speed not be fast? Which great emperor was it? The martial Tao Prime Body asked. Throughout history, there had not been many great emperors recorded together. Up till now, he had only heard of two. Demoness G said, according to this great emperor, she was in an extremely ancient era. You might not have heard of her, but she's known as Great Empress Nine Nether. Great Empress Nine Nether. The martial Tao Prime Body murmured softly and asked, is Great Empress Nine Nether a woman? Yes. Demoness G nodded and looked at Su Zimo in surprise. After all, it was difficult to associate the title of Great Empress Nine Nether with a woman. The martial Tao Prime Body asked again, does this woman wear black and wield a long sword? How do you know? Demoness G's face was filled with disbelief. It was a coincidence that I was lucky enough to witness this senior's glory in the past. The martial Tao Prime Body did not explain in detail. Demoness G said, this senior is a woman. Before she became a great emperor, she was known as the Nine Nether Pure Maiden. The Nine Nether Pure Maiden Sutra she created is one of the taboo mystic classics. The martial Tao Prime Body nodded. It seemed like Demoness G had already learned the taboo mystic classic. Right then, Demoness G did not notice and staggered, almost falling. The martial Tao Prime Body supported her hurriedly. What is it? Demoness G frowned slightly and looked down. Earlier on, she felt like she had kicked something. A dark yellow mud bump appeared on the ground beneath her feet, looking extremely abrupt like a tomb. Demoness G harumphed softly and stomped twice heavily, muttering, how dare you trip me? Right then, Demoness G paused in her actions and froze on the spot, her flawless face filled with fear. What's wrong? The martial Tao Prime Body sensed Demoness G's abnormality but did not think too much about it and merely asked casually. After all, Demoness G was quirky and playful. Perhaps she had faked this scene on purpose. Su Zimo. I. Someone just blew a at the back of my head. Demoness G's voice was trembling and she even sounded like she was about to cry. It was clear that she was extremely afraid and her expression did not seem fake. However, the martial Tao Prime Body did not sense any danger in the surroundings nor did his spirit perception warn him. Hee. Right then, a sinister laughter sounded out of nowhere beside the two of them. Miss, you've stepped on my tomb. Chapter 2541, 2541 Ghost Immortal. 2541 Ghost Immortal. Accompanied by that sinister voice, a menacing and terrifying face gradually appeared in the darkness behind Demoness G. The martial Tao Prime Body was alarmed and did not have time to think. He pulled Demoness G over and shielded her behind him, glaring at the figure that appeared slowly in the darkness with a grim expression. He looked like an old man covered in blood. His face was pale and there was no life in him, resembling a malevolent ghost. No matter the old man's background, the fact that he could hide from the spirit perception of the martial Tao Prime Body was enough to shock him and make him on guard. To think that two little children would come here. He. The old man let out an unpleasant laughter once more. His grin extended to the back of his ears, as though it was splitting his entire head into two. Could it be a ghost immortal? Demoness G gradually calmed down as she panted and said with a trembling voice. Ghost immortal? The martial Tao Prime Body's heart skipped a beat. Back in the Emperor's tomb, the Green Lotus True Body encountered a ghost immortal who was extremely powerful and nearly died inside. Thankfully, he managed to survive with the help of the Soul Lantern. Demoness G continued, however, according to the inheritance memories given to me by Great Empress Nine Nether, the conditions for the formation of ghost immortals are extremely special. At the very least, an emperor has to die. Only the powerful grievances of emperors could turn them into ghost immortals. Back then, the Green Lotus true body was only at the Black Immortal realm and did not know much about ghost immortals. The information he had was not accurate enough and he merely heard a bit about them from Feng Zi. He thought that ghost immortals were formed by the death of experts whose souls refused to enter reincarnation due to their grievances. Furthermore, they cultivated their own sentience. To think that the prerequisite for the formation of a ghost immortal was for an emperor to die. In that case, it could explain why there was such a ghost immortal in the emperor's tomb. It was said that the formation of the emperor's tomb was the death of an immortal emperor. Later on, other emperors took the risk to enter the emperor's tomb and were inevitably cursed and buried there. Demonist G continued, however, emperor experts are considered as peak existences of the upper world and it's extremely difficult for them to perish, let alone die violently. How can there be an emperor here? At that point, Demonist G's voice stopped abruptly. Suddenly, she recalled that there was indeed an emperor buried here, Fiend Emperor Apocalypse. Could this be the final resting place of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse? Naturally, the martial Tao Prime Body thought of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse right away as well. However, he was still puzzled. He had a feeling that the dark space here was out of place with the tomb of the Fiend Emperor above, as though they were two different worlds. Above the chamber, within the radius of the Fiend Emperor's tomb, grotto heavens could not be released and their divine powers and secret skills were sealed. However, the two of them were almost completely unaffected here. At that moment, he did not have time to analyze carefully when the ghost immortal opposite him suddenly took a deep breath towards the two of them. The martial Tao Prime Body felt his mind go adrift and his essence spirit felt a powerful suction force that was about to pull it out of his body. Thankfully, the power of the Mara mask burst forth and blocked his essence spirit, allowing him to regain consciousness instantly. However, Demonist G's cultivation realm was insufficient and she could not defend against the devouring power at all. A wisp of her essence spirit left her orifice and flew towards the ghost immortal opposite her. Against such ghost immortals, none of the dermic Daos of the martial Tao Prime Body could cause much damage to them. However, he had a treasure that could kill the ghost immortal. Using his robes, the martial Tao Prime Body swept up a dim bronze lantern from his storage bag and smashed it towards the ghost immortal opposite him. Hee hee. The old man gave a strange laugh and reached out for the old bronze lantern with his withered palm. Kid, you can't hurt me, arg. Before the old man could finish, he suddenly shrieked. It was already too late for him to dodge and shake off the soul lantern. Right in front of the martial Tao Prime Body, the old man transformed into streaks of light that entered the bronze lantern and vanished completely. The bottom of the bronze lantern had clearly gained another layer of oil. Back then, the ghost immortal in the emperor's tomb merely touched the soul lantern with his walking stick and was almost sucked to death by it. For this ghost immortal who dared to reach out with his hands, he did not even have the chance to escape. Demonist G's essence spirit returned to her consciousness once more. She looked in the direction where the old man disappeared with lingering fear. Demonist G heaved a sigh of relief. To think that there would be a ghost immortal beneath this chamber. I wonder what happened to Fiend Emperor Apocalypse back then to cause him to die here with such deep resentment. Something's not right. The martial Tao Prime Body retracted his bronze lantern and murmured with a frown. Why? Demonist G was puzzled. The martial Tao Prime Body said, the tomb of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse above was exquisitely set up. It's clear that he was prepared. If he had died violently, why would there be this tomb here? As the martial Tao Prime Body spoke, he glanced from the corner of his eye and suddenly realized that Demonist G was looking behind him with a horrified and pale expression. In the darkness behind the martial Tao Prime Body, a figure appeared slowly and approached silently like a ghost. It was a menacing face that resembled a malevolent ghost. It opened its mouth in the darkness and wanted to devour the head of the martial Tao Prime Body. Another ghost immortal. Throughout the entire process, there was no reaction from the spirit perception of the martial Tao Prime Body. Hurry and escape. Demoness Ji shrieked and lunged towards the ghost immortal in the darkness behind the martial Dao prime body without hesitation. When the martial Dao prime body noticed the strange expression on Demoness Ji's face, he realized that he was in immense danger. His surroundings were pitch black and he might not be safe no matter where he hid. The martial Dao prime body's reaction was extremely fast. His spirit consciousness moved and released a martial spirit fire that entered the lantern of the soul lantern. Phew! The soul lantern was ignited instantly and burned with a tiny golden flame. The light extended and enveloped his surroundings. Ah! The ghost immortal behind him seemed to be severely injured by the golden light, and golden flames surged from his body, unable to be extinguished. Soul! The ghost immortal only had time to say a single word before he was enveloped by the golden flames and devoured. His essence spirit was destroyed and his soul dissipated into nothingness. Demoness Ji paused in her tracks and looked at everything in shock. She had not expected that the seemingly unassuming bronze lantern in the hands of the martial Dao prime body would be so powerful. Ghost immortals did not have true flesh and blood. In reality, they were formed from souls and resentment. This treasure, the soul lantern, was the nemesis of these ghost immortals. The essence spirits of the martial Dao prime body in Demoness Ji were in their consciousnesses and were protected by their bodies. When the soul lantern was ignited, it was filled with a golden glow and did not cause them any harm. What's going on? Why are there two ghost immortals here? Should we leave quickly? Demoness Ji's face was pale as a sheet. She felt uneasy and increasingly felt that this place was sinister. The surrounding darkness seemed to be filled with an indescribably terrifying aura. The martial Dao prime body had a grim expression as he rolled up the soul lantern in his hands and suddenly threw it into the surrounding darkness. Ah! 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 The golden light dispersed the darkness and dozens of ghostly figures appeared instantly, letting out a series of tragic cries as they squeezed and retreated, wanting to avoid the light of the soul lantern. When she saw that, Demoness Ji's expression changed starkly and she shuddered. There were dozens of ghost immortals hiding in the darkness over there. Chapter 2542, 2542 Tomb of Emperors. 2542 Tomb of Emperors. Some of the ghost immortals who were slower to dodge were affected by the golden light of the soul lantern, and golden flames ignited in their bodies, turning them into ashes before long. The martial Dao prime body's heart skipped a beat. He merely probed the darkness over there out of cautiousness earlier on. To think that there would be dozens of ghost immortals. The martial Dao prime body had a grim gaze as he swept up the soul lantern and surveyed the surrounding darkness. Ah! 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 Instantly, tragic cries sounded from the surrounding darkness. In all directions, ghostly figures could be seen fleeing in all directions from the soul lantern's radiance. Pust! This time round, even the martial Dao prime body felt a chill run down his spine and his hairs stood on end. After spinning with the soul lantern earlier on, he saw hundreds of ghost immortals. It was hard to imagine that there were so many ghost immortals hidden in the darkness around the two of them, waiting for an opportunity to strike silently. If not for the soul lantern in his hands, the two of them would have been torn apart by the ghost immortals earlier on. More than that, he was shocked and wondered what sort of a place this was beneath the chamber that could produce so many ghost immortals. Could it be that the hundreds of ghost immortals were formed from the death of emperors? Could there be hundreds of emperors buried beneath the chamber? That speculation was way too terrifying. Even the martial Dao prime body felt chills run down his spine when he thought about it. At the side, Demoness Ji was already dumbfounded and speechless. Hundreds of ghost immortals meant that hundreds of emperors had died here. What sort of a concept was that? The martial Dao prime body took a deep breath and composed himself rapidly. No matter what, he had to get rid of the ghost immortals first. Otherwise, letting them hide in the darkness would be too much of a threat to the two of them. At that thought, the martial Dao prime body rolled up the soul lantern and placed it in front of him, blowing hard at the oil in the lantern. The oil of the soul lantern splattered everywhere and scattered on the ground, purging away the surrounding darkness instantly. Soul lantern. It's the soul lantern. Many ghost immortals shrieked and fled into the darkness. Many ghost immortals were enveloped by the golden flames and burned into nothingness before long, vanishing completely. The martial Tao prime body brought Demoness G and swept up the soul lantern before chasing after the remaining ghost immortals. As the two of them advanced, the light of the soul lantern purged away the darkness and rows of mud bumps could be seen on the ground beneath their feet. Although there were no tombstones or markings, both of them could tell that the mounds were simple tombs. The plot of tombs was not too big and the terrain was in the shape of a long coffin. Hundreds of ghost immortals had nowhere to hide in the coffin-shaped tomb. The martial Tao prime body caught up to them quickly and killed them all with the soul lantern. The souls of those emperors did not dissipate and gathered resentment, forming strange living beings like the ghost immortals. They were trapped here and could not see the light of day all year round, unable to enter reincarnation. For them, death in the hands of the martial Tao prime body was a form of relief. After getting rid of all the ghost immortals here, the soul lantern absorbed a large number of souls and the oil was completely filled. The radius of light expanded significantly and illuminated the entire space. The martial Tao prime body in Demoness G turned back and saw unassuming tombs scattered among them along the way. However, they were filled with an indescribable might and shock. Although the plot of tombs was not big, there were more than 1,000 tombs buried here. Furthermore, those tombs might all be the tombs of emperors. Not all emperors would transform into ghost immortals after their deaths. Therefore, although there were more than 1,000 emperor tombs here, there were only a few hundred ghost immortals. Even so, this scene had a huge impact on the mental states of the martial Tao prime body and Demoness G. Who would have thought that there were so many emperor tombs beneath the tomb of the fiend emperor above? What happened back then to cause more than 1,000 emperors to die here? If these emperor experts came from the same era, it meant that more than half of the emperors of this era might be buried here. What was up with these emperor tombs? Back when Fiend Emperor Apocalypse established his tomb above, did he know of this situation beneath? In the mind of the martial Tao prime body, he could not help but recall the turmoil that affected the trichiliocosm that Book Immortal Yunzhu mentioned to the Green Lotus true body. At that time, Yunzhu was not sure if the chaos existed either because almost all the records of the chaos had been erased, leaving only some blurry records. Could the tragic death of the emperors have something to do with that chaos? Countless questions flashed through the minds of the martial Tao prime body in Demoness G. The two of them stood on the spot for a long time. Demoness G seemed to have thought of something and frowned, trying her best to recall. The martial Tao prime body turned around and looked at the end of the plot of tombs where a thick steel dozens of feet tall stood. The steel looked ancient and heavy, emanating a deathly aura of time. It was blank with nothing on it. A thought flashed through the mind of the martial Tao prime body as he looked at the gigantic steel. Although there were no markings on the steel, it gave him a feeling that it was more like a tombstone that was used to suppress this place. He did not know who established the tombstone, but it could resolve a doubt in his heart. It might be because of that tombstone that the hundreds of ghost immortals were suppressed here and could not escape. Right then, a loud bang sounded from the easternmost side of the chamber, as though a huge battle had broken out above. Bang! Boom! The tomb of the Fiend Emperor above was shaking violently and could collapse at any moment. The martial Tao prime body in Demoness G hid in the chamber at the bottom and would not be implicated. If I'm not wrong, Hidden Space and the others must have discovered the flames of War Spear. The martial Tao prime body murmured softly. Right then, dark clouds gathered in the firmaments outside and Fiend Shi coiled. A pair of gigantic eyes were hidden in the clouds as they glared at Bei-In Mountain with a terrifying might. The fiends around Bei-In Mountain were shocked and knelt on the ground one after another, shivering. Even Grotto Heaven Realm Fiend Kings who sensed the aura from the firmaments did not dare to hesitate and knelt on the ground with reverent expressions. Even they could not defend against that pressure. A Fiend Emperor had appeared. Who killed my son? Fiend Emperor Ling Zhao's voice was filled with suppressed rage that caused one's heart to tremble. His voice reverberated through the skies of the Fiend domain like thunder. In the tomb of the Fiend Emperor, Fiend King Hidden Space and the others had just entered a chamber when something happened. The flames of War Spear appeared and attacked them fiercely. Fiend Emperor Ling Zhao's gaze seemed to be able to penetrate the tomb of the Fiend Emperor and witness such a scene. Suddenly, a gigantic palm extended from the clouds and covered the skies as it grabbed towards the tomb of the Fiend Emperor. Boom! Fiend Emperor Ling Zhao's palm strike almost uprooted the entire Biyao mountain, and the Fiend Emperor's tomb that was already on the verge of destruction collapsed instantly. The might of a Fiend Emperor was extremely terrifying. Chapter 2543 Descent of Apocalypse. 2543 Descent of Apocalypse. The martial Tao Prime Body summoned the Hell Suppression Tripod, prepared to break through the void and leave with Demoness G. Given the capabilities of the Fiend Emperor, the two of them could not hide for long. If he was discovered by Fiend Emperor Ling Zhao, even if the martial Tao Prime Body could break through the void, he might not be able to return to Avicii under the watch of the latter. Given the power that the Fiend Emperor had just displayed, the martial Tao Prime Body had no doubt that once the two of them were discovered, even if he entered the spatial tunnel, Fiend Emperor Ling Zhao would be able to sever it and capture the two of them. Right then, Demoness G suddenly said, "I seem to remember." What? The martial Tao Prime Body asked instinctively. Demoness G said sternly, "This tomb beneath Fiend Emperor Apocalypse should be the tomb of a great emperor." The martial Tao Prime Body's heart skipped a beat. Prior to this, who would have thought that there was a tomb of a great emperor hidden beneath the tomb of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse in the depths of Biyao Mountain? However, on second thought, only a great emperor could afford to have 1,000 emperor tombs buried with him. However, he did not know what sort of an existence this great emperor was in the past to be so terrifying as to kill so many emperors. Who is this great emperor? The martial Tao Prime Body asked. Demoness G pursed her lips slightly and hesitated, as though she was wary of something. Right then, a loud bang sounded from the tomb of the Fiend Emperor above. Immediately after, a flare surged into the skies and charged towards Fiend Emperor Ling Zhao, who was in the clouds with a resplendent glow. The flare emitted a scorching and terrifying aura, and the power it released could go against the might of a Fiend Emperor. The majestic power even tore the void apart, leaving clear cracks. "Humph, how dare you act so brazenly without an owner?" Fiend Emperor Ling Zhao harumphed coldly, and a saber shrouded by Fiend Qi suddenly appeared in his palm. It descended from the skies and seemed to split the firmaments into two. Clang! Fiend Emperor Ling Zhao's black saber struck the flare and revealed its true form. It was the flames of War Spear. As for Fiend Emperor Ling Zhao, his body shuddered after being struck by the flames of War Spear. He appeared and stood in midair with a hint of shock in his eyes. Boom! The flames of War Spear fell to the ground and pierced through it, causing spiderweb-like cracks to appear in its surroundings as the ground shook. The flames on the spear intensified. In the flames of War Spear was burned red and almost transparent as its aura rose continuously. The martial Tao Prime Body and Demoness G exchanged glances and were shocked. To think that this emperor weapon would release such a terrifying power the moment it was born after being buried for tens of millions of years. Hidden Space and the other Fiend Kings watching below were shocked as well. They could not interfere in a battle of such level. How is that possible? Although Fiend Emperor Ling Zhao was expressionless, his heart stirred. It was just an emperor weapon. Even if the spirit consciousness within was not destroyed, it could not release such power with no one controlling it. Your master has already died for tens of millions of years. How dare a single weapon like you try to violate my might? Fiend Emperor Ling Zhao glared at the battle spear that burned with raging flames on the ground and hollered, "I'm here. Hurry and submit. Everywhere flames of war goes, the territory shall belong to me." Suddenly, A deep voice sounded from the ruins of the Fiend Emperor's tomb. It contained endless might that could not be disobeyed. Demoness G's heart skipped a beat as she suddenly said, "Those were the words of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse in the past." How could? Demoness G did not continue and did not dare to continue thinking. When he heard that, Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao had a grim expression as he glared at the ruins of the Fiend Emperor's tomb and said coldly, "Stop pretending. Who are you? Why don't you show yourself?" Back then, every time Fiend Emperor Apocalypse conquered a territory, he would throw the flames of war spear out first. The living beings in the territory only had two choices: submit or escape. If anyone dared to resist, the destruction axe would descend alongside a calamity. Countless living beings would be slaughtered and blood would flow like rivers. Indeed, that action earlier on was in the style of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse. However, unless he witnessed it personally, Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao would not believe that Fiend Emperor Apocalypse could survive till now. The lifespans of emperors and great emperors were 10 million years. Even for the one named Great Emperor Longevity, he could not survive for tens of millions of years. You merely cultivated half of my Fiend's Sutra and yet you dare to bark in front of me? The deep voice sounded from the ruins of the tomb once more. That statement revealed a greater piece of information that was even more terrifying. The apocalyptic Fiend's Sutra was created by the person who spoke. In that case, the identity of the owner of the voice was obvious. When Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao heard that, he felt a little guilty and glared at the ruins with a bewildered expression. Bang! Boom! In the ruins of the tomb, countless boulders were sent flying as a tall and burly figure stood up slowly. His black hair danced and his eyes were bloodshot as he wielded a gigantic black axe. Although that figure stood in the ruins of the tomb, its aura was even more domineering and terrifying than Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao, who was in the skies. Nobody had seen the appearance of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse before. However, when many people saw that figure, they were certain that it was the ruthless person from tens of millions of years ago, Fiend Emperor Apocalypse himself. The martial Dao Prime Body had also seen the Black Fiend diagram before. The figure drawn on the Fiend diagram was almost identical to Fiend Emperor Apocalypse before him. How was that possible? Fiend Emperor Apocalypse was not dead? A Fiend Emperor who should have died a long time ago had reappeared in the world tens of millions of years later. All the living beings in the vicinity of Biyao Mountain were stunned on the spot by the aura emanated by Fiend Emperor Apocalypse and did not dare to move. At that moment, any activity could lead to death. The world seemed to have gone silent and the air froze, as though it had stopped. In the Great Emperor's tomb, the martial Dao Prime Body finally understood something. There was a reason why the Fiend Kings could not release their grotto heavens after entering the Fiend Cave. That was because Fiend Emperor Apocalypse was not dead at all. The Fiend Cave that they entered was actually a world conjured by Fiend Emperor Apocalypse. How could the grotto heavens of Fiend Kings be released in the world of a Fiend Emperor? As for him and Demoness G, they returned to normal after falling into the tomb beneath the chamber and could release divine powers and secret skills. It was also because the tomb they were in right now was the tomb of a great emperor. Although the world of a Fiend Emperor was strong, its power could not cover the tomb of a great emperor. In the skies, Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao looked down at the figure in the ruins of the tomb. At that moment, he seemed to have an illusion that the person below was looking down at him with a cold gaze. He still could not believe it. Fiend Emperor Apocalypse was still alive and had lived for tens of millions of years. Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao was certain of one thing. Even if Fiend Emperor Apocalypse was still alive, he was not at the level of a great emperor. Once one became a great emperor, all the emperors of the upper world would obtain a mysterious connection. Chapter 2544, 2544 Death of a Fiend Emperor. 2544 Death of a Fiend Emperor. The two Fiend Emperors were in a standoff. Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao was still hesitating. Although he wanted to retreat, he was worried that he would be deceived. After all, the fact that Fiend Emperor Apocalypse had survived for tens of millions of years was way too unbelievable. Right then, Fiend Emperor Apocalypse raised his head slowly and looked at Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao, who was in the skies. "You've already lost your final chance to survive." The moment he said that, Fiend Emperor Apocalypse waved his palm. The flames of war spear that stabbed into the ground suddenly tore through the void and stabbed towards Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao, arriving before the latter instantly. This attack was even more ferocious and murderous than the impact of the flames of war spear earlier on. At that moment, Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao sensed the killing intent of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse. He was also truly certain that the other party was Apocalypse, the ruthless person from tens of millions of years ago. Phew! Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao did not dare to hesitate and opened up a part of the world. As though he was one with the world behind him, he gripped his saber with both hands and slashed towards the flames of war spear. Clang! There was a loud bang. Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao shuddered and the world that he had just propped up swayed. It was showing signs of collapsing. A casual attack from Fiend Emperor Apocalypse was already so terrifying and unstoppable. Boom! Before Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao could catch his breath, the massive body of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse suddenly rose from the ground and leaped, slashing towards Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao with his gigantic black axe. At the same time, a gigantic black hole appeared behind Fiend Emperor Apocalypse. Flames of war lingered outside and fiend chi surged within. This was the world he had condensed, the apocalyptic fiend cave. Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao had nowhere to retreat and could only channel his essence spirit wildly. He gathered heaven and earth and raised his fiend saber to defend above his head. Boom! Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao's world could not defend against it at all and was almost defeated, devoured by the apocalyptic fiend cave. Under countless gazes, the destruction axe tore through the fiend saber and struck the top of Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao's head. Without stopping, it split him into two from head to toe. The world went silent instantly. The Emperor's blood dyed half the firmament's red. Not only did the destruction axe split Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao's body, it also killed his essence spirit instantly. This was a fiend emperor who established the strongest faction in the fiend domain this generation and had dominated for many years. However, he died on the spot with his blood tainting the firmaments the moment he appeared today. In reality, the reappearance of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse had caused too much of a stir. The other fiend emperors that were initially dormant in the fiend domain were alarmed as well. However, those fiend emperors did not appear rashly. Instead, they hid in every corner of the fiend domain and watched the situation silently. Yet, even they had not expected that Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao would be struck to death by Fiend Emperor Apocalypse within 3 moves without the chance to escape. Once one cultivated to the Emperor realm, it was extremely difficult to die. Unless, the difference in strength was immense. To think that Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao would die in less than 3 moves against a ruthless person who was notorious tens of millions of years ago. Since he cultivated the Fiend Dao, he shouldn't have established any faction and involve himself with too much karma. If he hadn't appeared to take revenge for his son, he wouldn't have ended up in such a state. It's fate. He only managed to advance to the Emperor realm after cultivating the Apocalyptic Fiend Sutra. How can he defend against the creator of the Apocalyptic Fiend Sutra? Let's disperse. Now that this person has appeared, the fiend domain will probably belong to him in the future. Hee, it's not just the fiend domain. How can the pure land of bliss and 9 firmament immortal domain be spared? Now that he's reborn, he's definitely going to make a comeback and conquer the heavens. At that time, the Trichiliacosm will probably be embroiled in the flames of war. Over the years, chaos has happened repeatedly and many signs have already indicated that a calamity is about to arrive. Although we're emperors, we might not be spared. The few fiend emperors hidden in various parts of the fiend domain conversed secretly before returning to normal. They retracted their auras and vanished. Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao was dead. This scene had a huge psychological and visual impact on everyone present. Hidden Space and the other fiend kings were pale. If even Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao could not defend against a single axe strike from Fiend Emperor Apocalypse, it would be as simple as crushing a few ants if this ruthless person wanted to kill them. Greetings, Fiend Emperor. I'm Hidden Space and I'm willing to submit. Fiend King Hidden Space was the first to react and knelt on the ground to express his obedience. Now that Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao was dead, there was naturally no way these experts of Firmament Ascension Palace could retain their loyalty. Fiend King Lu Tsang and the others knelt down as well. Fiend kings such as Fiend Celestial Black Heaven and the others had their own sects and factions and were actually rather resistant to submitting. However, Fiend Emperor Apocalypse was way too ferocious and killed an emperor the moment he appeared. They did not dare to express anything at all. When they saw Fiend King Hidden Space and the others submit, the expressions of Fiend Celestial Black Heaven and the other Fiend Kings turned terrible and they hesitated. Right then, Fiend Emperor Apocalypse turned his head slightly and looked towards Fiend Celestial Black Heaven and the others with his bloodshot eyes. Pust. Instantly, a chill ran down the spines of Fiend Celestial Black Heaven and the other Fiend Kings. As their hearts skipped a beat, the Fiend Kings knelt down with a thud without hesitation and sprawled on the ground tightly, not daring to be disloyal. If even Fiend Kings could not withstand the might of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse, it was even more impossible for the fiends around Biyao Mountain to endure. No matter what sect they were from or the level of their cultivation, the fiends present knelt down one after another to express their submission. In fact, no one dared to escape against the might of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse. The martial Dao Prime Body was in deep thought when he saw that. Not long ago, a supreme fiend, Emperor Bo Sun, appeared. And today, another ruthless person from tens of millions of years ago had reappeared. If the two of them wanted to occupy the territory of the Fiend domain in the future, there would definitely be a fight. The appearance of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse inadvertently helped him get rid of the immense threat of Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao. With the death of Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao, no one would cause trouble for him even though he killed Prince Ling Xian. However, although the threat of Fiend Emperor Ling Xiao was removed, an even more terrifying and dangerous existence appeared. This existence was probably not a good thing for him or Tianhuang's sect. The martial Dao Prime Body did not act rashly. If he hid in the tomb of the Great Emperor with Demoness Ji, there was a chance that they could hide and avoid the detection of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse. If he were to break through the void and escape from this place rashly, he might alarm Fiend Emperor Apocalypse instead. Right, you haven't told me which Great Emperor this tomb belongs to. The martial Dao Prime Body sent a voice transmission to Demoness Ji's spirit consciousness and asked secretly. When he asked about this earlier on, Demoness Ji was hesitant. Thereafter, a huge change happened above and Fiend Emperor Apocalypse appeared. Both of their attention was focused outside. That was the reason why Demoness Ji did not mention the name of the Great Emperor the entire time. It's not that I don't want to tell you. Demoness Ji said, in the memories of Great Empress Nine Nether, she was also extremely secretive about this Great Emperor. It seems like the name of this Great Emperor is a taboo that can't be mentioned. Chapter 2545, 2545 Heaven Burial. 2545 Heaven Burial. Can't be mentioned? The martial Dao Prime Body frowned slightly. Be it Great Emperor Infinite or Great Emperor Longevity that he knew of right now, they were recorded in the books of history and left countless legends. What was so special about this Great Emperor that even Great Empress Nine Nether was wary of him? Demoness Ji hesitated for a long time before sending a voice transmission. The name of this Great Emperor should be Heaven Burial. Boom. Although Demoness Ji sent a voice transmission with her spirit consciousness, the moment those words sounded in the mind of the martial Dao Prime Body, the gigantic steel at the side seemed to have sensed something and began to vibrate violently. Demoness Ji was shocked and retreated a few steps. The martial Dao Prime Body turned around and saw that a thick layer of dust and gravel had fallen off the surface of the steel. It was filled with words. The martial Dao Prime Body hurriedly raised the soul lantern in his hands and allowed the light emitted by the soul lantern to envelop the steel and take a closer look. On the leftmost row of the stele were 3 words: Heaven Burial Sutra. Heaven Burial Sutra. The martial Tao Prime Body chanted instinctively. As though some seal was triggered, the moment the words Heaven Burial Sutra were said by the martial Tao Prime Body, the part of the stele that recorded them began to shatter and fall off. Furthermore, the trend was still spreading and the stele was already filled with cracks. It's the taboo mystic classic left behind by Great Emperor Heaven Burial. Hurry and memorize it. Demonist Ji reacted right away and said hurriedly. The martial Tao Prime Body realized the importance of this matter as well and summoned the Green Lotus True Body. He released the spirit consonance art right away and established a connection with the Green Lotus True Body. Far away in Heaven and Earth Academy, a ripple appeared in the eyes of the Green Lotus True Body. It was as though he had crossed the voids and caught sight of the stele deep underground in the heartland of the fiend domain. Time was tight and the stele could be destroyed at any moment. The 2 true bodies were telepathic. The Green Lotus True Body memorized the first half silently while the martial Tao Prime Body memorized the second half on the gigantic stele in his mind. Demonist Ji's eyes were widened as well as she tried her best to read the sutra on the stele. However, she merely read 2 lines before she felt her eyes sting and tears flowed uncontrollably. She could only give up helplessly. Splash! The gigantic stele did not last long before it collapsed rapidly, turning into dust. It was as though the sutra had never appeared in the world. The appearance of the Heaven Burial Sutra was fleeting. Thankfully, the 2 true bodies joined forces and memorized the taboo mystic classic completely. As long as the 2 true bodies communicated with one another, they would be able to obtain the complete Heaven Burial Sutra. Naturally, the martial Tao Prime Body would not cultivate this taboo mystic classic. All he had to do was smelt the profound truths of the Heaven Burial Sutra and seek inspiration to perfect the martial Tao. However, this taboo mystic classic was extremely important to the Green Lotus True Body. If the Green Lotus True Body were to cultivate another taboo mystic classic, his combat strength would increase by another level as well. Furthermore, when the martial Tao Prime Body was memorizing it, he took a rough glance at it. He was almost certain that this was a fiend technique, a taboo mystic classic of the fiend Tao. The martial Tao Prime Body was already satisfied that he could locate Demonist Ji in this trip. To think that they were ambushed by ghost immortals under the chamber, allowing him to make use of the soul lantern to purify them while filling its oil. Furthermore, by some freak coincidence, he even obtained a taboo mystic classic. These were huge opportunities. So what if he did not obtain the Apocalyptic Fiend Sutra? Although the Apocalyptic Fiend Sutra was strong, it was not at the level of the taboo mystic classics. However, the Heaven Burial Sutra could be considered as an actual taboo mystic classic. More than 1,000 emperors were buried with Great Emperor Heaven Burial. It was not hard to imagine how terrifying this great emperor was back then. The name of the Heaven Burial Sutra alone gave off a ferocious and arrogant aura. Could it be that this great emperor had once wanted to bury the heavens? As the gigantic stele collapsed, the tomb of the great emperor could not hold on either and swayed continuously, as though it could collapse at any moment. Let's leave this place first. The martial Tao Prime Body summoned the Hell Suppression Tripod to break through the void, bringing Demonist Ji into the spatial tunnel. Although he was delighted after obtaining the Heaven Burial Sutra, he did not forget that there was a terrifying fiend emperor from tens of millions of years ago guarding outside. The commotion here might alarm that fiend emperor and he had to leave as soon as possible. The martial Tao Prime Body still had many questions regarding fiend emperor Apocalypse. However, at that moment, he did not have time to think too much about it. Just as the 2 of them entered the spatial tunnel, the martial Tao Prime Body turned back and looked in the direction of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse. He could not help but shudder. At that moment, Fiend Emperor Apocalypse was also staring at them. However, Fiend Emperor Apocalypse did not attack and merely looked at him deeply before ignoring him. Before long, the martial Tao Prime Body brought Demonist Ji back to Avicii. When he recalled the final gaze of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse, the martial Tao Prime Body fell into deep thought. The way he looked at you at the end was a little strange. Demoness Ji noticed what happened as well and mentioned in confusion. There were countless fiends present and only the two of them managed to escape from Fiend Emperor Apocalypse. That action was akin to a provocation to Fiend Emperor Apocalypse. Since they had already been discovered, given the personality of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse, he would definitely attack and kill the two of them on the spot. However, Fiend Emperor Apocalypse did not attack. Instead, he allowed the two of them to leave. Could it be because he's wary of Emperor Bo Sun who's backing you? Demoness Ji frowned slightly and probed. The martial Dao prime body shook his head. Fiend Emperor Apocalypse was an expert from tens of millions of years ago and does not know Emperor Bo Sun at all. Furthermore, given his personality and methods, he shouldn't have any reservations even if he knows about Emperor Bo Sun. Demoness Ji nodded. However, that gaze of his was way too strange, as though there's a deeper meaning to it. The martial Dao prime body remained silent and could not think of an answer right away. At the mention of Bo Sun, he was puzzled as well. The moment Bo Sun appeared, he disappeared in a strange manner once more. All these years, there was no news of this emperor who cultivated both the Buddhist and Fiend Daos. It was as though something had happened to him and he vanished completely without a trace. On 2 occasions, the martial Dao prime body used his name to intimidate others. If Emperor Bo Sun was still alive, he should have come knocking a long time ago. Let's go. I'll take you back to Tianhuang's sect. The martial Dao prime body said, there are also some old friends from Tianhuang mainland there. They'll definitely be surprised to see you return. All right. Demoness Ji agreed readily. Now that Fiend Emperor Ling Shao was dead and the threat of Firmament Ascension Palace was gone, she could join Tianhuang's sect openly without attracting any trouble. To be precise, from this day forth, Firmament Ascension Palace might be removed completely. From now on, in the Fiend domain, it would be the world of Fiend Emperor Apocalypse before Emperor Bo Sun reappeared. The martial Dao prime body left Avicii with Demoness Ji and activated the teleportation formation around Great Tai Wei Mountain, returning to Tianhuang's sect directly. Chapter 2546, 2546 7 Emotions. 2546 7 Emotions. Fiend Domain, Tianhuang Sect. Core cultivators of the sect were gathered in Tianhuang Hall. Apart from Yan Beichen, Mingzhen, Gu Tongyu, Chiu Siluo, Feng Zi, and Heavenly Wolf, there were some other cultivators as well. Thunder Monarch Heavenly Wrath had suddenly gathered everyone with a grim expression. Everyone knew that something big must have happened. Something happened at Beiyin Mountain. Thunder Monarch Heavenly Wrath said hesitantly, our sect master has just been there. There were not many people who knew the true identity of the martial Dao prime body and they were all from Tianhuang mainland. That was Su Zimo's secret. Usually, if outsiders were present in Tianhuang's sect, the Thunder Monarch and the others would address the martial Dao prime body as sect master. Something happened to the sect master? A cultivator could not help but ask. Thunder Monarch Heavenly Wrath shook his head. Up till now, I haven't received any definite news. However, I heard that the tomb of a fiend emperor appeared and attracted many fiend kings. Even Firmament Ascension Palace's fiend emperor was alarmed. Even a fiend emperor had appeared. Everyone's expressions changed as they realized the seriousness of the matter. Everyone knew the methods of the martial Dao prime body. With the Hell Suppression Tripod, even if he could not defeat fiend kings, he could break through the void at any moment and hide in Avicii to escape unscathed. However, if a fiend emperor were to appear, that would be completely different. A cultivator said in a deep voice, the news I received was that a conflict broke out between the sect master and the prince of Firmament Ascension Palace outside the fiend cave. There's a high chance that this is the reason why Fiend Emperor Ling Shao appeared. Another cultivator said, Deputy Sect Master, hurry and invite Emperor Bo Sun out. Now that Fiend Emperor Ling Shao has been provoked, Tianhuang's sect will be in danger of being annihilated. I don't know where Emperor Bo Sun is. Thunder Monarch Heavenly Wrath shook his head gently. The reason why I called you guys here this time round is because I want you guys to head out of the heavenly world first and look for a star to hide in. Where are you going? Heavenly Wolf asked. Thunder Monarch Heavenly Wrath said, I'll go take a look at the heartland of the Fiend Domain. I'll go too. Yen Beichen said immediately. Thunder Monarch Heavenly Wrath said, your cultivation is not high enough. It's useless even if you go. Your mission is to try your best to protect Tianhuang sect. There's no need. Right then, a man and a woman entered the hall. The man wore purple robes and a silver mask. It was the martial Tao prime body. The woman wore white and had a face that could bewitch all living beings. Her eyes were watery and there seemed to be ripples in them. When the woman saw some familiar figures of Tianhuang's sect, she could not help but smile happily. The woman's smile stunned everyone. Even Heavenly Wolf was stunned and grinned without noticing the drool at the corner of his mouth, let alone the cultivators in the hall. The first to snap out of his stupor was Thunder Monarch Heavenly Wrath. He was an immortal king after all and had encountered a huge calamity in the upper world. After being imprisoned for hundreds of thousands of years, his Tao heart had long been tempered to the point where there were no flaws. Just as Thunder Monarch Heavenly Wrath snapped out of his stupor, Ming Zhen's expression changed and clarity returned to his eyes as he chanted a Buddhist proclamation softly. Ming Zhen inherited the legacy of Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva and Emperor Ananda. With a clear Buddhist heart and profound understanding of Buddhism, he broke free from that bewitchment before long. The third person to regain consciousness was Yen Beichen. The moment he first saw the woman, he had an illusion that she seemed to have transformed into Qin Pian Ran and was smiling at him. However, he cultivated the Fiend Obsession Buddha Karmic Sutra and quickly realized that Qin Pian Ran had already died a long time ago. That was merely an obsession in his heart. Although they were both women, Chiu Siluo was bewitched by the woman's smile and was momentarily dazed. Suddenly, a flute sounded. Gu Tongyu was the first to snap out of his stupor and blow the fallen soul flute. Chiu Siluo's heart skipped a beat and she snapped out of her stupor instantly. Smiling at Gu Tongyu, she plucked the strings of the zither gently with her fingertips. The zither and flute played together. Feng Zi shuddered and woke up to the sound of the zither and flute. As for Heavenly Wolf and some people in the hall, they were still immersed in their hallucinations with infatuated expressions and had long forgotten where they were. The martial Tao prime body did not stop everything. It was good for everyone in the hall to witness Demoness Ji's capabilities. Suddenly, Demoness Ji realized something and hurriedly took out a veil from her storage bag to cover her face. She cultivated a taboo mystic classic and had long fused its profoundness within her. Even without releasing any cultivation technique, every single frown, smile and action of hers was bewitching and captivating, causing one's heart to flutter. Now that she had suddenly covered her face, the others finally snapped out of their stupor. Heavenly Wolf shuddered and lowered his head instinctively. His saliva had already formed a large puddle in front of him. How embarrassing! Heavenly Wolf cursed internally and sprawled on the ground silently, covering the water tracks as he glanced at the martial Tao prime body guiltily. Little monk Ming Zhen and brother Yen Beichen, you guys are here too. Demoness Ji was all smiles as she beckoned to the two of them. Amitba, Amitba. Ming Zhen lowered his head and focused his mind, chanting Buddhist proclamations in his heart before smiling over. Patron, how have you been? Qin Pianran was the only one in Yen Beichen's heart. He nodded frankly towards Demoness Ji. Another old friend from Tianhuang mainland, let's have a good chat. Demoness Ji paused slightly on Chiu Siluo and Gu Tongyu. The two of them looked unfamiliar and should not be from Tianhuang mainland. However, Demoness Ji quickly guessed their identities and smiled gently. All these years, I've long heard about the zither and flute fiends of Tianhuang's sect. Now that I'm seeing them personally, they truly live up to their reputation. The zither and flute of the two of you are truly pleasant to listen to. My name is Yao Yan. I hope that I'll have the chance to learn from you in the future. Chiu Siluo and Gu Tongyu nodded to Demoness Ji in greeting. Demoness Ji's gaze finally landed on Thunder Monarch Heavenly Wrath as she murmured, "Could this be?" Although she was in Firmament Ascension Palace, she had also heard of Heavenly Wrath. "I'm Feng Cantian and I was from Tianhuang mainland as well." The Thunder Monarch stood up with a smile. The Martial Dao Prime Body said, "You should have heard of Brother Feng's name in Tianhuang mainland. He was one of the monarchs, the Thunder Monarch." "Ah!" Demoness Ji exclaimed softly and bowed hurriedly with a stern expression. "My humble respects, Senior Thunder Monarch." Be it Su Zimo or Demoness Ji, they were filled with respect towards the ancient monarchs. In the cruel and bloody era of Tianhuang mainland, it was precisely because of seniors of the human race such as the ancient monarchs who fought bravely without fear of death that the primordial 9 races were suppressed and driven to a corner of Tianhuang mainland, creating a glorious era that belonged to the human race. There's no need for formalities. The Thunder Monarch waved it off. Although you're a junior, your fiend technique is indeed powerful. Although the Thunder Monarch did not know that Demoness Ji had cultivated the taboo mystic classic, he was sharp and experienced. He could tell that Demoness Ji had immense potential and was definitely not weaker than Mingzhen, Yan Beichen, and the others. The Thunder Monarch pondered for a moment. The sect master once established the 7 emotions fiend generals and I'm one of them. If you don't mind, there's a position suitable for you. Oh. Demoness Ji's beautiful eyes flickered as she looked at the Martial Dao Prime Body and asked with a smile, "Could it be lust of the 7 emotions?" You're tuning in to the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.